So your first paper is LGBT. I'm like, oh, thanks. He's like, yeah, your first paper is going to be like the most difficult and most controversial paper we've ever produced. Pride Month was coming around the corner, and this year's Pride Month was not like last year's. This, like, just massive. This was like 10 times way bigger.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Prophetic Mentality Podcast. I am your host, Umar Mabrook, joined by my co-host Munir, and we are rejoined by a very special guest, Shaykh Mustafa, Umar, one of the original 7 that joined us for one of the most successful podcasts on our show. Glad to have you back, Shaykh. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, excellent. Alhamdulillah, great to be here.
Alhamdulillah. And, you know, we're just going to get right into it. It is Pride Month, and we are sick of it. The abortion decision just came out, and there's a lot of... I don't know, maybe confusion, or maybe there's like a rift between like the scholarly da'wah class about what's the different way, the different kinds of messaging that's going to come out. So these are the topics we're going to be addressing today. But let's get started with the LGBTQ. But before we get started, just so no one takes anything we say out of context, Munir, can you please quickly, as quick as you can, just give us like the Islamic, like just the summary of the...
Because you'll give it more you're going to give it like more fiqh, but because we want to move beyond this. The conversation's beyond, feelings you're not sinful for. If you act on it, it's sinful. Okay, let's move on. Like
give it a little bit more. You had a little bit more to say.
What else is there at this point? Oh, if you believe it's halal and someone else, so even if someone else is acting on it, you're not the one who has these feelings, and someone else acts on it, you say that's okay, that's also haram. And maybe terms for leaving the religion in some cases. Is
that it?
I mean, that's the biggest surface level. I want us to move beyond that part of the conversation.
Wait. That's 24 seconds. 24 seconds it was pretty much the summary that you needed for we don't need a whole seminar. I don't think we've been talking about this for years now. So I think it's time that the culture is way past that. I think the Islamic position is very clear. Shaykh, you have put out three khutbahs, 2008, 2012, and I think another one in...
this year.
Was it this year? Yeah.
Just a couple weeks ago, yeah.
I couldn't find the 2008 one,
Okay.
but I listened to the other two. And mashallah, you've been very consistent. All right? And we're going to link those down there. You're very consistent in how we should not support these kinds of actions and the negative consequences that they're having on the community. So... would you say there's anything else we would need to add to Munir's statement? Like from high level, not the nuance, but the high level.
High level, no.
That's it, right?
No, that's it. That's pretty much
okay. So this is no fault against you, but you were part of the Yaqeen panel that just happened like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I will be very frank and say I was not very...
You thought it was late.
I thought it was a little disappointing. I thought that panel should have happened in 2015.
The panel should have happened in 2000.
So okay,
before Yaqeen was founded.
Okay, in 2000. But I think now, like that conversation, I think it's what at this point it's like it's the cultural discussion, the societal impact that we're talking about, right? We understand it's haram, but what are we doing as a Muslim community to combat this ever-growing pressure, this ever-growing hegemony of LGBTQ ideology? We had you on maybe 3 years ago, and you were talking about how this stuff was coming up in schools, people saying, I'm a tree self, you were homeschooling your kids, and even then you have to teach your kids these things, and you were doing, like, you were taking them to the park, and like you would just read the curriculum, so you would sign it off
while they're swinging on the swing. That was a suggestion that was given to me by a Christian who is the advisor for the homeschool curriculum.
So it's like, okay, at what point are they just going to say you can't homeschool anymore, or they're going to bring an LGBTQ advisor to make sure that you're really drilling these points home, because this stuff can happen, right? Especially in California here. I mean, a lot of Muslims, we live all over the United States, but in California, the school districts here are very progressive and they have a lot of velocity when it comes to this stuff, right? Stroke of the pen, done, boom. You know, next year your curriculum's all over, different. So.
Well, the good news, the flip side of that is you're right, this is California, but that Supreme Court ruling government funding being allowed for private schools, even religious schools. That is very welcoming.
So does that mean the IOK tuition will go down?
That's the IOK tuition is supposed to disappear, right? That's what's supposed to happen technically. I was in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, I visited the masjid over there. It was so interesting. They have an Islamic school, and the Islamic school, anyone who lives around the area of the Islamic school in that entire region of the city of Milwaukee, it's all paid for by a voucher program. So I'm like, hold on. You're telling me that the Islamic school, every single child in the Islamic school gets government funding and they don't have to pay almost anything to have their kids to go to an Islamic school? And they're like, yeah.
So the teachers are paid for by the voucher and their benefits and all that
Everything. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, well, what in the world? This is crazy. And I'm like, for everyone, he says, well, not everyone, anyone who lives on this side of the border of the district or whatever.
Yeah.
District. So Muslims specifically try to buy housing, and they up the housing because they know Muslims want to be on this side of the street.
An address.
An address so that they can get into the voucher program and they can get their kids in Islamic school for free. So Muslims are willing to pay like $200 additional rent per month to be in this address so that their Islamic school for all the kids is free. I'm like, this is amazing. Imagine if this was applied throughout the country. And this is exactly what the Supreme Court ruling had just opened the way for, potentially. So yes, IOK could be free, and Minaret could be free, and all of these other ones, some Islamic school, I believe, should be shut down anyways. They shouldn't even exist in the first place. So it doesn't matter if they're free or not. But the other ones, alhamdulillah, the ones who are teaching proper,
they're actually say who they are?
I'm this close.
I think
I'm
you
this
should.
close.
I think you should. You've heard the stories.
The thing is, I've heard this. I can't validate the details of what goes on over there, right? But let me just put it this. Let me give some principles, right? If there's almost no Islam being taught in the school, if the majority of teachers are non-Muslims, doesn't matter if they have academics being really high. If the overwhelming majority of almost all girls in that school, regardless of what, once they reach the age of hijab, none of them are wearing hijab. Overwhelming majority of teachers are not wearing hijab. They're not teaching Islamic principles, and they're not even praying Zuhr prayer inside of the Islamic school.
Or they let the girls lead it.
Or I don't know. I never heard that
that's
one.
what Shaykh Sohail told us.
I did not hear that.
That's
Wow.
his wording.
Wow.
They let the girls lead because they want them to have understand.
Lead the boys too?
Yes, lead the mixed congregation so that the girls understand that they are
Wow.
leaders as well.
I did not hear this. This is new.
One of my wife's friends left because they chastised her for telling a girl to put on like a scarf thing when it was time to pray.
I had heard a story similar to this.
And then I think one of them was fired.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Subhanallah. Yeah. So when you have stuff like that, assuming this can be verified, right? Those Islamic schools are they're not Islamic. They're we shouldn't even call them Muslims. We should just call them cultural schools. They're like it happen to be schools where Muslims happen to come from. They're like teach a little bit. I heard the Arabic curriculum's not even great, anyways. So even the Arabic curriculum was criticized. So I'm like, what's the point of that? You can't even get the culture properly. So you got academics there, but I don't understand. Man.
Yeah, man. We won't name them just yet because we're not faced. We can't just validate things based on anecdotal evidence.
Exactly.
But if you're coming to California and Southern California and you're like, I'm going to send my kids to a Muslim school, just reach out to myself, Munir, Sheikh Mustafa, Sheikh Sohail, and we're going to let you know exactly which school to avoid.
Yeah.
So we could just leave it at that. Yeah. But yeah, so right now with the where was I?
We're talking about the hegemony and the speed in which California schools can indoctrinate everyone across the board with
the schooling.
This stuff, yeah.
The schooling is one thing, because right now I think Muslims are more now talking about sending their kids to Islamic schools, putting their money in full-on Islamic institutions. Homeschooling has been an option that is discussed way more often in our social circles. But specifically on the point of the cultural pressure and the societal pressure, right? Because this is constantly having a negative consequence on the community. And there are actors within our community that are actively propagating these discussions. They prop up Muslim speakers. They publicly endorse and advocate for allyship within the LGBTQ community, and at the same time they come to our masajid and they are giving khutbah, which is implicitly what's the word I'm looking for?
Endorsing,
legitimizing their position. So right now there's a bifurcation happening within the da'wah class, right? What is, like, where do you see this going? Because this road is at a divergence. It's like 10 years down the line, these same actors who have been very active and very close to us in the Muslim community, it's going to come to a point where we can't just say anymore, but they've done so much great for us. They have served the community so greatly. Yes, they have. A lot of these people have done many good things, and I'm sure they've gotten the reward with Allah, and we have recognized them. But at some point, at what point do you just have to put your foot down? And how do we put our foot down? And how do we do it firmly, but it, like, in a way where it's not like you don't want to be an extremist? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's
let me set an approximate framework. Should we avoid names, or should we just throw some names out here?
Throw names.
Okay, bismillah. So
IOK doesn't care. I sure don't care.
Alhamdulillah.
I don't
Okay.
make my money from
Okay,
this.
so my understanding is what we're talking about here. We're talking about, on the one hand, we got Daniel Haqiqat Jew, and we got Muhammad Hijab, basically calling out scholars like Shaykh Yasser Qadi and Shaykh Umar Sulaiman.
Can we further, like,
Add some people?
No. So Daniel does it. Daniel has a methodology
Yes.
where it's just attack.
Yes.
And he's gonna, like, Daniel's gonna call up the news media and dig up old footage, and they're gonna scour through thousands of hours, and they're gonna find the clips.
I just heard Daniel flew to the border of Mexico to actually, he was the one with the camera in his hand filming Sheikh Omar Suleiman himself. I didn't realize, I didn't know that. Someone just told me this, very solid, that this ritual that was being done.
Wait, I don't think he flew there.
Someone
No, Daniel said they contacted the news media. That's what I heard.
someone told me that he himself was actually filming it.
You're telling me that Omar Suleiman was standing right there and he saw Daniel filming him and he didn't do nothing?
That's what I was just
That
told.
doesn't make any
But,
sense.
anyways, I'm not sure if that's true. I thought maybe you would know if that's the case or not, because there was footage on, like, being zoomed in and all that. So I don't know if that's the case.
Because I know that you can reach out to news and then you can maybe request archival footage for journalistic purposes. So maybe that's what happened. But I think Daniel, okay, if Daniel videotaped that himself, that would have been out a lot sooner. Because it was years after.
It was
It was like a year after or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So there was multiple incidences.
I found that surprising, but that just means that there's a vendetta, But anyways,
I really don't think it was him.
okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I really don't think it was him.
Either way, you're right. We should differentiate between.
There's Daniel, who's attack.
Yeah.
Muhammad Hijab has been he also has had a progression, whereas he has hosted Jonathan Brown, Dr. Shadi Al-Masri, talking about the issue, and it was a very cordial, and Dr. Shadi has always been firm, like, this is haram, we should not support this, and Jonathan Brown's like, nuance, my ratio position, Lut did not talk about marriage, and it's kind of, okay, sure, all right, maybe, but now it's kind of like, this is just awful and wrong.
By the way, I don't listen to any of these people, by the way. I get informed from the community members that I didn't even know that these two people became so popular, like, in the last, like, 2 years or something.
Well,
like
Muhammad
that.
Hijab has always been popular in the UK. Extremely popular
in the da'wah scene. I've
scene.
known about him, but I didn't realize he all of a sudden, like, became popular across the board, like, within the last 2 years or something.
He's very charismatic, great debater, has a lot of great scholars behind his back, is always quick to rectify his mistakes publicly, and when he's put in check and is wronged, he stand like he. Alhamdulillah. So it has all the great characteristics of what a da'i should be. He sometimes he has a little bit of a bravado, right? And some people don't like him for that, but I think we need a little bit of that. Muhammad Hijab comes at it from a different angle. He's more like, these people have done great for our community. We should respect the things they've done, all the positive things they've built, but this needs to be rectified.
I saw his latest video in responding to the Yaqeen video that we did. Yeah, so I've seen the responses lately.
Got it. So that's one thing. So that's Muhammad Hijab and Daniel.
Yes. So you got that here, and then there's a critique of these scholars, top celebrity sheikhs like
Omar Sulaiman,
Shaykh Yasser
Qadi.
Primarily too. You could throw Jonathan Brown in there.
JB, yeah.
You could potentially throw Sherman Jackson in there. Most people don't know about it, but he's one of the first people who said many years ago that Muslims don't have to be against gay marriage in Prop 8 in the state of California. So he is one of the people who actually threw out the idea in the beginning. All right, and then we met with him, a group of scholars here. He was at USC then. We talked to him about his position. Huh?
He still is, right?
Oh, yeah, he's still at USC.
Yeah.
So when he had come recently, we came and we met with him and we discussed some of these issues. So he said, I was just mentioning that kind of in passing, like as a theoretical position. And he writes this in his book, Islam and the Black American. It's in one of the footnotes. So actually, I believe, I don't know if this is direct or not, but I believe Jonathan Brown has some level of influence coming from his original framing of the issue. Sherman Jackson's original framing of the issue. So if you put them kind of like here. Now, obviously, he's modified his position significantly because I talked to him on a personal level as well. He's very concerned for his kids. I mean, this Dr. Jackson is
he's a man's man.
He's a man's man. Yes, he's a man. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
He's a man's man. He is writing a manifesto, like a nasiha or a wasiya for his own children. It's like, if I pass away, this is what I want you to understand about the world that I've learned, over time. And he's going to discuss atheism. He's going to talk about liberalism. He's just become just hardcore, just anti-liberalism in terms of the philosophy and the hegemony of liberalism. He's been writing about this for a very long time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he just writes at such a high level.
Yeah.
That it could take me months to like decipher. I'm just an average guy, you know?
Yeah.
So
he speaks at that high level. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But so you have kind of like these scholars in the middle over here. We can call them the popular scholars. We can call them the nuanced scholars. Whatever you want to call them, right? And I believe nuance is important, but there's some controversial points we're going to get into about what they're holding that are being critiqued from the side.
Yes.
And then you got over here, you got the Ilhan Omar. You got the
Rashida.
The Rashida.
You got the what's her name?
I hear that Ingrid Mattson.
Ingrid Mattson is off.
The recent comments that just came out, about abortion and all
Harma, Muslim girl, anyone affiliated with Face.
Right, Face. A Muslim girl. I'm not really familiar with that.
Oh, Muslim. Okay, it's a publication for Muslim girls by Muslim girls, and they just talk about just think of the nastiest things that Western women do. They contextualize that for the Muslim girls and like how it's okay and like safe sex and consensual sex, like that. It's all that same
like
nasty.
Cosmopolitan, but for
Muslim girls.
But they put a Muslim face on it.
With Muslim face on it. Like they got that's them.
Okay.
And then Linda Sarsour.
And
right.
That's about it.
That's about it.
This group over here. So you got this, and then many of them. I don't know about Ingrid on the LGBT. I'm not sure what she says, but the rest of them, they're there's videos of them at pride parades dancing with what do you call trans activists, drag queens, all of that stuff happening, right?
Alhamdulillah.
So what you got, and then also to put in the middle, you got ICNA, MAS, ISNA. You have these mainstream organizations that are trying to be this face of American Islam, right, or American manifestation of Islam. And they're inviting different speakers. And they're like, we want to be the balanced people. We want to deal with politics and politicians and all of that stuff. And you got activists again on the right side over here.
Yeah.
So if we kind of set up the playing field over here, right, this is kind of what we have. LGBT topic, right?
Yes.
Okay, so LGBT, we got the people... The traditional Muslim stance is described in 28 seconds, right? Okay, so this is clear. All Muslims are here when it comes to halal, haram, where we draw the line, this and that. I think there are. I think to be honest, there are many Muslims who don't believe that the feelings are not haram. Right? They actually believe that the feelings themselves are haram. So I think many Muslims are, not understanding that differentiation. So there should be a differentiation and some nuance there. But regardless, that doesn't affect the rest of these issues.
Yeah, that doesn't. The feeling, because we're not talking about feelings anymore.
Yes. Yeah. We're talking about the political.
My right to identify.
Yeah. Exactly.
My right to be represented.
Right. Exactly. So here we got this critique going on over here.
Yes.
We got these people who are basically saying, for political reasons, we need to either support the lobby, tolerate the lobby, be quiet, not really stand up to them or something like that.
I think that's what they're saying.
So here's
the middle group.
This is not what they would have originally said. Had the lobby not been so powerful, had they not had such a vested interest in trying to be in the public sphere and trying to be like if they were just in their local masjid, it would be very different.
So where does the vested interest come from? Who gave the push for, like, why do you want to just be in the public sphere?
Here's what's I've spoken to both figures, right? We're talking about Shaykh Umar Suleiman and
Yasir
Shaykh
Qadi.
Yasir Qadi, and saying the type of people that look up to us, the type of following that we have, right? A following is not the best word, but the type of people who look up to us for guidance. We're trying to give a very balanced message, and we're trying to pull in people on this side and bring them to the middle of Islam. We're trying to pull people from this side, bring them into the middle of Islam. And there's not everyone who's going to be able to do that. Therefore, there's some level of caution, extra level of caution that we have to put into our speaking. It's not only Imam Siraj. He said that on just this issue in particular, right?
Okay.
I don't think he holds back on other issues. Shaykh Yasir Qadi is saying the same thing. Shaykh Umar Suleiman is saying the same thing. Now, I know what their critique is going to be, right? I'm telling you what their position is.
Okay.
Their position is that, look, especially Yasir Qadi. Yasir Qadi comes from a background where he was hardcore Salafi, right? He was
You're calling out Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, calling out any other big name sheikh at the time, like this guy's.
his Ulum al-Quran book, and I told this to him, man. I tell it to him many times. I say, I love your Ulum al-Quran book. In fact, I've taught it recently in many classes. But 100 pages are dedicated to blasting the aqidah of the Ash'aris and saying that they're basically kafir, right? And I'm like, and he's like, and I renounce all of that stuff. I said, but the rest of the book's fantastic. In fact, I think it's still one of the best Ulum al-Quran books out there that you can even find. He goes, no, I don't even have a copy of that. I don't recommend anyone ever even look at that book. It's just in the past, it's disappeared, right? I'm just like, well, you're trying to undo this old personality that you had. And I believe that he's trying so hard to flip the pendulum the other way. And I've told this many times. I'm very close to him. I believe he's a very knowledgeable person, more knowledgeable than most scholars. I believe he's a very intelligent person, and I believe he's a very sincere person as well. I mean, when it's easy for people to watch a lecture and be like, well, why didn't he do this or why didn't he do that? When you spend time with people and you travel with them, and you even if you live in a hotel room, you have breakfast with them, you spend a lot of time, you get a different perception of who they are, right? This guy is not playing around. I mean, he's a foodie. He likes to eat and stuff like that, But outside of that, this guy is studying all the time. This guy is researching. This guy's thinking about the concerns of the ummah and everything like that. So he's a genuine person. And one of the unique things about him, he was telling me, is that he grew up privileged, Islamically privileged. I mean, he comes from a family of dawah, family of Islamically knowledgeable people. He was never into music. He was never into movies. He never went to any of that stuff. So on the one hand, he may be able to not relate to people who go through that, but at the same time, he was a focused person. So anyways, so what he's saying and what these people are saying is that, look, someone like him particularly, he's got this old personality and he's trying to reshape himself into something different. But while doing that, and this happens to a lot of people, they go on the opposite. They go on the other side, right? So if he's like, I was overcorrection, exactly. Yes. So he's like, I was extreme Salafi on this side. So he's trying to keep himself away from this as much as possible, but not. He wants to be here. Everyone wants to be in the middle. Everyone should want to be in the middle. But he's actually overcorrecting and drifting over here, and not understanding, not realizing that he has such a massive following. And what happens when you have a massive following, you don't have the privilege to sit there and be like, well, listen, guys, I'm going to keep changing my opinions over the next 10 years because I'm rebalancing myself. And what's going to happen is the people who are with him here and they see him moving over here, they're like, we disavow this person completely because we want to remain here.
There's Salafis today who blast Yasir Qadi all the time.
Complete SalafiTalk.com or whatever the website is, right? The whole thing, just nonstop refutation of him, right?
Yeah. That's
fine.
fine.
Listen to the thing he's saying. But what I told him, I said, if you're not firm about some positions that you're taking, if you've not thought through these issues very properly, if you've not had proper peer review on certain issues, like the LGBT stance on the political frame, what should you do politically? Like the interview that he had with Linda Sarsour. Horrible interview.
But
right?
It's not just that. There's statements from 2012.
Why don't you highlight those statements?
it was actually a comment from his Sira class about that we should support them politically.
Oh, I did not know that.
I mean, this just came out today.
Oh, okay.
It just came out this morning.
This has got to be DH. DH just all of a sudden. Yeah.
So someone mentioned it in the comments.
Let me see. This is what I say about Daniel. I know Daniel on a personal level too. Daniel. So people have been asking me lately, what do you think about Daniel and his rhetoric and this and that? I say Daniel is a fantastic investigative reporter. That's what he is. He's one of the best investigative reporters that I've come across, and he actually uncovers things that the Muslim Ummah should know about. But then an investigative reporter, that's kind of where they end. And then the spin that they put on it, you should kind of avoid the rest of the spin. So I compare him to like Glenn Greenwald, who ironically is gay. And Daniel wouldn't like this comparison. But Glenn Greenwald is a very interesting person. He's a fantastic investigative reporter.
It's like Project Veritas, if you know.
No, I don't know.
They're like also investigative reporters. They pull up a bunch of, like, they'll find things that you wouldn't, like, how'd you get this? You know, like,
no, the reason I don't know if you understand the connection between my selection of Glenn Greenwald in particular. You're not aware.
No, I'm not.
Okay,
please clarify.
Glenn Greenwald is an investigative reporter who started The Intercept, right? He had to leave the country. He was doing fantastic reporting, but he also happens to be gay. And not only that, CARE Southern California invited Glenn Greenwald to be their keynote speaker several years back. This caused a massive problem in the Southern California Muslim community, where many imams went to them and said, hey, you shouldn't be bringing someone who's overtly and openly gay to be your keynote speaker, because he's kind of a representation of the gay community. And their response was, no, he's not a representation of the gay community. His reporting is fantastic, so we're bringing him as a reporter, not because of whatever else he's doing.
He's not talking about being gay.
Right, but what you find is that many people actually had a major problem with CARE, such that they had a complete fallout with CARE. Because of bringing him on as a keynote speaker, which relates exactly back to what we're talking about. At what level are you going to? What level should you be censoring the people who you invite to a banquet or something like that, right? So of course, CARE banquet is very different than ICNA conference or something like that.
I mean, now they bring Ilhan Omar without impunity, like that.
That's my point. So we're gonna come back to this point about ICNA president's comment on the role
CARE
model
just
stuff
brought Ilhan to Irvine.
Recently, right now?
It's like 2 months ago.
Yeah, it happens regularly. I'm aware, right? But CARE is a political organization. ICNA is different. It has a different function, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an ICNA conference, right? But so that's why I brought Glenn Greenwald in particular. So he's a fantastic investigative reporter. Daniel is a fantastic investigative reporter. I believe that the stuff that he brings actually helps have conversations like this, because probably maybe 70% of the content, right, was uncovered by Daniel, or at least spread by Daniel, and helps us to kind of have a framework of, hey, should so-and-so have really said that? Now, his spin is really bad. I think he's taken it way too far, smear campaigns and all of that. But it's actually good to know, because like I didn't know that this was said in 2012, and I didn't know about this other thing, and I didn't know about this water ritual that took place or whatever it is. These are good things for us to know and to learn from, lessons ourselves. Hey, if I ever go to interfaith gathering again, I kind of toned it down. I don't have time for these things anymore. But if I see someone walking up with a bottle of water to me, I'm going straight up jujitsu. Like, this is as a 2-hand distance, right?
Is that consecrated, or are you just offering me water?
Exactly. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. That water is not going to be touching my body, So I'm gonna be careful about this. So I think there's value to these discussions, but then there's also the smear campaign. So that I just wanted to clarify, my stance on some of these things. I forgot where we were though.
No, that's fine. We were saying there's Daniel, Muhammad Hijab, kind of criticizing. You have the da'wah, like leadership, Omar Sulaimani, Asad Qadi, and then we have like the offboarding, the ones who's just gone off the deep end.
Yes.
So, I mean, I understand your characterization. I would disagree with it slightly.
Okay.
In the sense that I don't think the ones in the middle are trying to pull anyone criticizing them into the middle. I think they're actively calling them out as like Muhammad Hijab is one thing. He's had positive conversations, but I think he's on track to be on Daniel's side, where he will be not invited anymore.
Let me clarify. When I said they're calling them in the middle, sorry, I didn't clarify. I'm not talking about the leaders. I'm talking about just the general masses. So what I think they're...
the general masses.
I think what they're trying to do... So let's take Shaykh Yasser Qadhi is a good example. I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to take the people who were like him in the past, who are like on the hardcore extreme Salafi side.
Yeah.
And he's trying to bring them kind of towards the middle. And he's trying to take those progressive Muslims as well, who are like way out there, and he's trying to like bring them closer to the middle. So that's kind of what they're trying to do with this narrative. And they're trying not to say statements that are going to directly offend either party. So he's going to be very cautious about, you know what, let's just say all of a sudden he changes his mind and he's like, you know what, he decides to be Maturidi. Let's say internally, right? He's not going to come out and say that openly, right? He's going to be like, well, wait a minute, I'm trying to be this balanced voice. I'm going to lose these people. And so she's like, well, how can I frame this in a different way that I can kind of be that balancing figure for everyone? I'm saying this is the niyyah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the intention. This is the intention that's there. And I think people who are in a position of like this much fame and this many followers, this is what's going on in their mind. They're like, you know what? Let's not make too many overt statements, which could potentially just alienate people, where we can guide them slowly through a seerah class or a tazkiyah class or something like that, and kind of like bring them closer to Islam, because people are running away from Islam. That's the mentality. Now, the flip side is
that hasn't worked.
One, it hasn't worked on a very large scale, right? And number two, it's like, if people are confused about an issue, who are they going to get their guidance from? The person who's got 1,000 followers or the person who has 1 million followers? Everyone's looking at you for guidance on how to navigate this issue. And if you say, number one, I simply don't know, that's one thing. If you just stay quiet and you avoid the issue, then people are going to do what? They're going to go to everyone else and they're going to get their opinions from somebody else, because you're not giving them, the opinion that they need to hear. And I think that's a legitimate response.
Okay. Shaykh, I don't think that. Maybe it's just because I don't have a lot of knowledge, but I feel like you should never, if you're making a statement or if you want to make a decision and stand by something, it should just be because it's haqq, right? You should never be worried about the number of followers you will gain or lose. As long as you're being truthful, I think that's the only thing that matters. Okay. So if someone has made statements in their past, I mean, clearly, if it's documented, this was said in this year, this was said in this year, this was said in this year, and there's a track, and then now this comes into question, you can't just say, oh, my stance has always been clear. It's like, no,
okay,
you've
you're
changed.
talking about that,
I'm just saying, like, I think it's just, I think it's just time that we just say, all right, you know what? We made a mistake. We said these statements and we disavow these statements, and now this is our new position and we're going to work into something better. You can't just wash away what happened in the past, right? So that's why I'm saying there has to be like a hard line, like a cutting of the rope kind of.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that. And I've advised both of these figures.
Okay.
I've advised both of them directly, and I said, look, once you reach the 1 million follower mark, right, your people are following every word that you say. What should happen is that anything that you've made a mistake in the past, right, and you agree and you admit that you made a mistake or you learned a lesson from it, whatever it is, there should be a public policy statement. Say, you know what, by the way, I made a mistake here, and this is how I corrected it, and this is what my current stance is, or something like that, on such a hot issue.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when we're not talking about like 20, 30 people. We're not talking about a few hundred people. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of people are waiting for clarification on a certain issue and saying, you know what, you did this, you did that. It's being highlighted now, right? Once it's being highlighted, yes, you should respond, and the response should not be like what the media does. When the media makes a correction on some big news thing, they put it like in some little corner of some little back page or something like that. And you know, one of these two, I'm not going to mention who, say, yeah, I've made the responses. Look, there's a video clip here. It's like a 1 hour lecture. And then it's like a few minutes into like 47-minute of like this one random interview that didn't even have that many posts or something like that. Like, that's not sufficient, because when you get to the level of being that type of public figure, yes, it should be a much more clear correction of what your position is, or clarification of what your position is. And that's what I suggest.
I think that's the learned response from hanging out with too many politicians. I mean, for me, ever since Donald Trump won, I spent a lot of time reading into politics and watching politics, probably for the detriment of my own spirituality. But unfortunately, this is what politician does. They never say, I made a mistake. They always just say, when they're directly questioned, you said this in the year 2000, and now you are saying this. How do you reconcile these two statements? They will look you directly in the eye and say, I have always been very clear in my stance. Anyone who's ever listened to my lectures knows that I have always voted this way. And you're like, right? That's so. It's like we're Muslim, right?
In reality, not only that. I mean, the thing is, in their mind, okay, they're probably thinking, what's better for the ummah and all of that stuff. Even from a political perspective, there are politicians who knew how to master the art of apologizing and using the apology to continue with what they're doing. I mean, I don't know which books you study, but
not. I mean, when I say, sorry, I read articles. I didn't read like political theory.
Okay.
I'm keeping up with the trends, watching things like that's why I'm saying it's not healthy.
You'll even find some, this is like the bad form of politics, right? You'll even find some very prominent leaders who openly apologize and then use that apology to spin and say, and now I'm going to make sure, like, you're my people. I want to be honest with you, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm going to make sure that I've learned this lesson so that such and such thing, I'm going to be a better politician now. And they get even more support. So you could actually, you're right.
Because honesty.
Genuinely,
yeah.
you should do it it doesn't matter if you do it for the people or not. You do it for Allah, right?
Of Allah.
Yeah.
And that's what part of being a good
100%
leader.
And on top of that, even if the waswasa comes and says, you know what, but that's going to somehow undermine my credibility with the people and then affect the dawah and then blah, 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 and this and this and this will happen. That's actually not really going to happen if you actually present it in a way that say, you know what, people, I'm a human being and I make mistakes, and this is something that I didn't think through properly, and now I've realized my mistake, and people will be like, wow, this person's willing to, like you just praised Muhammad Hijab for exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
He admits when he makes a mistake, he apologizes, and you said this increases his credibility. It could happen the exact same way.
I agree.
Yeah.
And to anyone who's afraid of apologizing due to them losing their following, Nak has more followers than any of these people combined, and he took the largest social hit out of anybody.
Absolutely.
And he still has millions.
No one can match him still, man.
No one can match Nak. And you have not seen his face at a single conference.
Correct.
He was at Yasser Qadhi's message. Bro, like he's the guy's still there. He's still very relevant. So I just apologize, and then eventually you'll understand that this is actually the better position, not just for you, but for everybody.
Yeah.
Agreed. No, yeah. So
Agreed.
this
but here's the other side, though. The other side is I honestly believe, and I mean I've tried to have a discussion. I'm closer. I mean I'm with Yaqeen now. Just recently joined, but I'm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm what's called a senior fellow. So what a senior fellow basically means, sounds really cool, but a senior fellow basically means you write one paper per year. That's it. One paper per year and one interview per year on the papers. So
one paper and then one interview on the paper.
No, actually, one paper and everything that comes with the paper, which means interview and some curriculum interview or something like that.
Okay.
All connected to the paper, and one 30 for 30 interview per year. Right?
Okay.
So I just came on board, and now all of a sudden I didn't realize there's like this massive smear campaign going on against Yaqeen and all that. But still, I think Yaqeen as an institute does fantastic work. There's no doubt about that. There's only two main controversial papers that they've ever had. One is the Jonathan Brown one on LGBT, and one of them is the Jalajal one on evolution, which there
was also the Jonathan Brown one on salvation. Right.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
He was talking about how non-Muslims may be able to be redeemed by God. He's trying to make some really weird, nuanced argument type thing.
Not the Ghazali argument.
No.
It's beyond that.
No, it was like non-Muslim, like straight up.
I think
he's
they
a
actually-
non-Muslim
they-
type, but they took out that paragraph. So the same
just took it out.
article's there, but he took that out. They redacted it, which is fine.
Okay. Yeah.
It was just redacted though. Like the
But it's kind of like what you said, like it's an article, and there's like just there's not even a footnote actually. It's just got redacted, and like unless you knew it was there.
That's the critique of
Yeah,
Muhammad
like
hijab on the
the
recent-
LGBTQ article's gone off. Yaqeen,
It's gone, yeah, but no
but
explanation.
it still exists on Jonathan Brown's website.
Oh, okay.
So if you Google it, it's still there. It's still on his. It's there without Dr. Shadi's response,
Right.
Oh,
And-
just his part.
which is
Probably.
worse. If
You
think
know whose
about it.
articles are also gone? Daniel Hafiq.
Oh, Daniel has been cleaned off. Yaqeen has been cleaned off. Muslim Matters.
He had some
has
good
been-
articles, you know, if you pull them up.
I don't think you need to explain why those were pulled. I don't think that requires much of an explanation.
I don't know.
So you know what's interesting? So we're talking about redacting and what should be the proper way to do it. So we say some people critique it. So they have two sides. One is, isn't it better for that redact it? And then they have like an article coming out that says like we pulled out this article for this XYZ reasons. But then the other side, I think this is their kind of framework, is if we don't want to draw attention to it, we don't want to draw. We pulled it out for a reason, and we don't want people to be like, oh, what was the controversy? And then it draws attention for that reason, and they're reading all this, and then it becomes a bigger thing than it is.
Right.
So trying to pull it and just be like, all right,
It's understandable.
news.
I think the best thing is to follow what are the common best practices in the field. So the thing is, Yaqeen is kind of somewhere in between an academic journal and like a
apologetics journal. Like apologetics.
yeah, kind of like I don't know what other apologetics journals are there. I mean, it's kind of like
You have
it's like a
Sapi-
Time magazine blend hybrid between like a Time
okay,
magazine
Sapiens
versus
Institute.
a thing that people actually read.
Sapiens Institute.
I'm
No.
not
This is Hamza Zortzitz. What's his name?
yeah.
Oh, Hamza Zortzitz. Okay.
Yeah, they have like a thing where they
Are they quite popular? They have a lot of.
they're
And,
in the
in
UK.
Europe, yeah.
They're very popular,
Okay.
and they're very they put out a lot of similar. They put out articles. They put out videos.
What I meant was like mainstream American non-Muslim culture.
Oh, mainstream.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the mainstream, right? So if Yaqeen is an academic institution, go look at what Islamic Law and Society Journal does when they want to retract an article for whatever reason, or they want to cancel out an article or issue a correction. Do they just simply remove it? Do they issue a correction? What do they do? Look at their best practices. And of course, that's different because it's designed for a specialist class of people. And then look at what happens in like maybe something which is more catered to the masses. Whatever their principle is among the two options, they should follow something along those lines, right? Because if that's the way you're going to situate yourself, is that we're a research institution. What do other research institutions do when something like this happens to them? Because it happens to everyone. It's not that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So just follow best practices.
Yeah, and well, what would those best practices be? Wouldn't it be to issue a formal?
That's my question is I don't know what the journals do.
Oh,
right?
you don't. Okay.
We should investigate and we should say, hey, we are following the same criteria as XYZ journals in the mainstream.
Well, Shaykh Osman disagrees with the JAMA. Like, so there's.
Oh, I'm well aware.
So
that one.
there's a lot of that to go around of how to pull an article. Okay, that's a fair point. I'll concede that.
But my point was I was mentioning Shaykh Yasser Qadi.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone, right? The guy is not. He's not a prophet. He doesn't have all the answers to all the questions, right? He's thinking through things, and while he's still thinking through things, he's throwing out certain theories out there, theory here and a theory there. What should we do? All this stuff. So my advice to him, and I've told him directly too, is that when you have such a following, you don't get the same license to throw out your
personal ijtihad.
Your half-baked, you're not half-baked, your half-developed ijtihads that you're still thinking through and you haven't finalized yet. And if you do, you need to say very clearly, you know what, I've been thinking about this issue for the last 5 years and I don't have a full conclusion on it yet. This is kind of where I'm leaning. So now someone goes back to that clip and they'd be like, oh, he said this, but that's not his really full position because he's still working it out. Like his position on the qira'at, which really got him in trouble and stuff like that. Yeah. He's been working this out for a very long time, right? And he has not talked to anyone about this stuff. I mean, on a personal level, I know he's been doing this research. I've seen some of the research. We've talked to him on a private level with so many imams present and everything. Whether you agree or disagree with his research, he's been very cautious about his own formulation of this idea until
the Muhammad hijab.
Until the Muhammad hijab, and he just leaked out this statement. And this statement got picked up by evangelicals. They're using this against Muslims and all that. And that's where, when you get into that position, you have to be so careful with your statements, where you're not conclusive on your theory, or you're not conclusive on how this theory should be conveyed to the masses. Right? So his theory, he's already made his own conclusion now, for the most part. He's not going to share it with the public or whatever. He has an idea. I'm not going to tell you what it is, right? But he has an idea of, basically, he's like, this is what I've come to. He's been thinking about this for like 10, 15 years. He's been doing a lot of research on it. He has a team of researchers working on it. So he knows what he's talking about on this issue, right? Regardless of whether you agree or disagree with his theory on the qira'at. But even if he's made up his mind, the way in which you're going to convey that to the average Muslim has to be thought through, maybe for another 5 years, right? Because it's a very, very serious issue. And I think
you're dealing with the preservation of the Quran.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're making a statement about that, it cannot be...
Exactly. And I think this is what happened with the LGBT issue with him. When it came to the LGBT issue, whatever he said in 2012 and whatever he said in that Linda Sarsour interview, he had not thought through exactly his formulation of how he should put it, and he just put it out there. Now, he shouldn't have cowered, in front of her, in front of Mehdi Hassan, all that other stuff, right? It's been bothering me. I mean, I think Daniel just got this interview like lately. In fact, Muhammad Hijab says, I had not seen this interview recently.
And he saw it because Daniel...
I know.
Because it's posted on like Mehdi Hassan, Al Jazeera. It's like, it's deep in the archives.
I watched this interview, I believe I watched it either live or like the next day. This is something that was big at the time. And it was bothering me significantly because I'm trying to formulate my own views, and I respect him very much. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, no, man, like this is not a correct formulation of what a Muslim scholar should be presenting. So this is not new. This is like big now. Everyone's like looking at it. All the Muslim imams and scholars, they were looking at this interview, and they're like, hey, we're trying to formulate our own position. How is it going to be formulated? And then we talked to Yasser about this, and he's like, I was just trying to do this and trying to this. He didn't have a clear formulated position on what he actually thinks, right? So I think what part of the problem of like not redacting something is that this is my theory, okay? Is that he's not redacting something because he doesn't have a clearly thought out framework on how to deal with these issues from the political spectrum, the theological thing. He's not exactly
I think he's
sure.
Clear. We can be fair. He's clear on the theological spectrum.
Yes, he's clear. He's clear. He doesn't know how to talk to the general masses on the political spectrum.
And that's fine. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. I think that actually just someone who has the temperament to be a scholar, it requires a certain temperament to sit there and read books and do research and go do a deep dive like that. And wrestle with an idea for 10 to 15 years. Mm-hmm. It takes a certain temperament.
Absolutely.
Now, all of a sudden, you are on a news station, TV. You have a very, like Mehdi Hassan, he has a commanding voice, commanding presence. You have Linda Sarsour, who is equally matched by Mehdi Hassan. She's very masculine in the way she presents herself.
She's very in her face.
Yeah, she's very like bravado. I'm from Brooklyn. You can't do nothing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then you have Shaykh Yasser Qadi with that scholarly temperament. Obviously, this is the clash. It's not the scholarly clash.
And it's the modified scholarly temperament. Back in his hardcore Salafi days, he didn't have. He would have destroyed Linda on that show. But now again, he's trying to reframe himself as well. So yeah, this modified scholarly temperament.
Exactly. That's the clash that's happening. Yeah. So it's like maybe you don't have to go on the interview. Maybe you don't have to answer every single call to an interview because. By the way, once, people should know this by now. Once people know your position, and they know you're not going to budge, they're not going to invite you anyway. They're just going to invite the next liberal Muslim, the liberal speaker who says they're Muslim, with blue hair and whatever, trans queer lover, and then oh yeah, I'm an imam of the Muslims, and they're gonna invite that guy.
Yeah. No.
So
This is exactly what happened. It happened at UCI a long time ago when the FBI was targeting the Muslims in Irvine and all of that stuff. You remember this show called on Fox News called The O'Reilly Factor?
Yeah.
Bill O'Reilly.
yeah,
So they were
Wait,
trying
the
to bring.
FBI was targeting the.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is before Irvine 11.
This is before Irvine 11. Yes.
Okay.
You're not familiar with the FBI case on Irvine Masjid, Mission Viejo Masjid, and the informants
It's
and
at
all
the
that?
Supreme Court right now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it got dismissed.
Oh, it
But
did?
Yeah, it got dismissed. Yeah.
Wait,
They
no.
knew it was gonna get dismissed.
Well, I don't know. Wait.
Oh, you got to read up on your history, man. This is
I wasn't.
Supreme Court case.
I wasn't in SoCal my whole life. Come
Okay,
on.
okay, this
I was
is-
in Egypt. I was all over the place. Come on,
Okay,
tell me.
I got
Tell
it.
me.
So this is FBI planted a guy named Craig Monte
What the hell?
into the Irvine Masjid, and he's an informant, and he's pretending to be a Muslim convert. I was there at the time. Right?
Wait, what year was this?
Something like 2003, 2004, somewhere around there.
I think we had a similar issue in Northern California, but continue.
Okay, this is well known.
Okay, okay.
So they plant this guy in Irvine, right? And he goes in there and he's like, I took Shahada. And he's like, white guy, comes in, starts wearing the Arab dress and everything like that. Starts hanging around with the Muslims, and he goes with the Muslim guys, and they're going to work out. All right, and this is this workout group. In fact, I went to one of the groups, to work out one day. Right, they go to the gym together and everything. And these guys, they're all like, in those days, everyone's listening to Imam Anwar Olaki. They're listening to the lectures and all that. So he comes in there and like every time he meets a group of people, he's like, man, we gotta go for jihad. We gotta go fight this. We gotta go that. And so then people started getting suspicious. Like, well, this guy's a little weird, man. Like he's a little bit too like pro jihadi, this and that. So finally, they contact like CARE. And then CARE calls the FBI and turns this guy into the FBI, right?
Oh wait, sorry, I do know this. I just didn't know his name. Okay.
So
Yeah.
This is the case, right?
Yeah, that's
And then
the
he
case.
flips
Okay.
on the FBI,
Yeah.
and he reports the whole thing and says, you know what? They hired me as an informant. He was a convict. He was a con man. He was in jail. They took him out. They paid him more money. He was sleeping with Muslim women in the community. I mean, it's just crazy stuff when you read the whole thing, right? And then Shaykh Yasser Fazaga was there in Mission Viejo at the time, and they had a good relationship with the FBI, and they said, are you spying our community? They said, no, absolutely not. There's no spying going on whatsoever. And then all of this stuff comes out. The whole thing was a lie. Finally, it takes like 2005. It takes like 15 years for this to reach the Supreme Court.
Wait, why was it dismissed?
They said that I forgot the exact wording. Don't quote me on it, but it was something like the lower courts can make this decision without having to go to the Supreme Court.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So they just sent it back.
They sent it back to the lower courts.
Got it,
right.
got
So
it.
the Supreme Court said we're not going to take it on. The lower courts can have it. So it went from the lower being dismissed. They went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court passed it back over there.
All right. Well,
So whether that's
ping pong.
everyone has their own spin on whether that's a victory or not a victory. So the activists are saying that's what we wanted to happen, and it's actually good for us. And the other ones are like, "What are you talking about? You lost the Supreme Court case." I don't know the details of that. I didn't follow, but it's a horrible. There's documentaries produced on this. So they were like, the thing is, the problem with informants is that they're not actually informing. They're provocateurs, right?
yes.
They're planting these ideas and entrapping people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the issue. How do we get on this topic?
How did we get on? Wait,
Irvine.
we were talking about Glenn Greenwald. What's his name?
No, that was way back, man.
So,
That
Shaykh
was like-
Yasser Qadhi's temperament, being on interviews.
Oh yes, O'Reilly factor. So
O'Reilly Factor.
so
okay.
prior to that,
Sorry, I can't rewind this. It's recording.
no worries. so you got there was some spying going on of UCI students as well, and protests, Palestine protests, and all that stuff. So they were gonna bring one of the students. O'Reilly was gonna bring one of the Muslim students onto the O'Reilly Factor, right? So they were like, who should we pick? Because he destroys his opponents. I mean, he's a professional at like destroying his opponents, right? You get on there, you're gonna get killed, right? And I remember, there was a decision going on. People were discussing and consulting. Should we even go on the show? When you go on the show, he sets up the thing in a way where you're there to basically be destroyed.
It's a lamb going to the slaughter. That's exactly what it is.
And
yes.
there's almost no way around it, And I watched a documentary of another guy. He was like a liberal activist or something like that. He was I forgot the exact something about 9/11 or
I've
whatever
seen
it
this
was.
one. I know
You've
you're
seen this
talking
one,
about-
right?
yeah.
And he was talking about how he rehearsed, like he watched every episode of every O'Reilly interview, and he like rehearsed every
He had
single
like a timer.
detail.
He's like, how much time I have?
Exactly. He had a timer. This is how much time I have before he's going to cut me off. He's going to say this question. He's going to do this thing. It was really.
So he like chess. He played chess with it.
He played chess with them, right? Which a lot of fighters do in UFC. They watch the other fights and they plan. This is the strategy and everything. So it comes back to exactly what you're saying: is that if you're walking into a situation where this person, if you know politics and you know media, you're going up against a guy like O'Reilly. If you're not prepared to this guy's level, where you've watched every interview, you know what questions are coming, you've timed it, you see what they're gonna do, you probably shouldn't walk into that interview.
Yeah, because it's not O'Reilly. You're not going up against it's O'Reilly, his producers, his editing team, his writers, his researchers.
And they know when to cut you off. I mean, they will lower your microphone. I mean, he studied everything. Yeah. They'll lower your microphone volume. He'll cut your microphone off at a certain point. He'll kick you out of the studio. And he kicked the guy out of the studio.
What? Oh, he did?
He's too well prepared.
Yeah, the guy was prepared. He's literally kicked him out of this. He cut him off. He's kicked him out of the studio, and they're like got a camera like watching him walk outside the studio. It was a really you should watch that documentary.
Oh wow, someone send that to me.
I was like, is it Jeremy Scahill or something?
It was about 9/11.
It was about some liberal actors. I forgot what it was.
Okay.
I think one of his family members was killed in 9/11 or something like
He's
that.
just questioning some part of the narrative or something.
Yeah, he was
like
questioning
that.
a part of the narrative, and he's like, O'Reilly can't stand this, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I have a right to speak because one of my family members was killed inside the building, so I have a right to have this opinion. How dare you try and take it away from me? So he wanted to get that out there on Fox News, and it's so hard for that guy to even say, with that amount of clout.
What are you gonna say? What are you gonna say to him?
Right?
You can't say anything to that guy.
But
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right?
O'Reilly still knows, right? They can set it. They set it up really well. So yeah,
Okay,
that
I
comes
gotta
back
watch
down
that.
to your point. Is like, you know what?
Yeah.
If
setting up the.
you're walking into the big leagues, you're walking into the people who are masters at manipulation. You shouldn't walk into that if you're not prepared.
Yeah, like the handler. Look, there's people advising Yasser Khadi. There's people advising Omar Sulaiman from a media standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
There is. When you get that big, I'm sure you have a team, right? Say this, don't say that. This is how you word things. This is your audience.
Yeah.
Okay. The people for Ilhan and Rashida, those are seasoned pros. Like your handlers are way less qualified than Ilhan. So what ends up happening is you get involved with these people, they got the one up on you. So that's just a consequence of when you deal with that group. So can we just cut them off now at the rope? Is it done? Like, is it?
Let me make just one more point. See, we were talking a little offline about how this messaging gets watered down from the middle, and you say, yeah, they're trying to pull in from all sides, and there's a good intention behind it. But you also mentioned how a lot of these guys, when you get that big, and it's even smaller people like yourself, you talk to a lot of people. You talk to people on the ground, and they come to you with stories, sob stories, really traumatizing stories. And so you have to realize that these guys, I have 1 million followers, and he's spoken to thousands of people, and they come to him. Like, imagine he comes and gives one lecture. He gives like a khutbah and maybe like a late night talk in the Bay Area. Neither of them are from the Bay Area. And yet people are going to come and be like, Shaykh, I have a story to tell you. My husband's beating me and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I'm literally seeing you for 5 minutes right now. And you want me to like solve your whole family trauma. Yeah. And this is happening over and over and over again. So what happens is, and you're saying like, if you're not properly trained with the right counseling mindset, whatever else, you can internalize this. And then the next time you give a lecture, I want to go hard on what the Quran says and whatever else, right? Yeah. On LGBT. But I literally just heard a mom cry that her lesbian daughter ran off because she didn't want to be part of the family anymore. So if I go hard on this LGBT issue, I might hurt the mom and make her cry again because it'll break up trauma. And I don't want to say like these are kuffar or something, one or the other. So then that message gets watered down slowly because they're just trying to say, I'm trying to say it without saying it. And then it's very hard to do that. That's
one. And then two is also your reality gets skewed if a certain subset or a group of people are coming and giving you those issues. And
they're the only ones talking.
They're the ones who are talking, right? It's kind of like they say that about like Yelp reviews or like product reviews. They say, most of the product reviews are like negative because people who have a great experience, unless there's some other incentive, they're like, why should I waste I'm not gonna do that. But your incentive is like, I want to vent, I want to like talk about how bad this product is. So there's an automatic skewing when it comes to sometimes the data that's coming in. Same thing happens with Muslim speakers, you know? And they need to, if they're not on the ground and they're not getting a good pulse and a good feel for what's going on in the community, especially when you get to such a high level, you're not checking your emails and you're not talking to that many people on the ground. You almost become like the ivory tower scholar, where you have all the book knowledge and everything, but you may not know what's going on the ground, and that skews your perception of reality.
And that's and I think that's where like the disenchantment that Munir and I are feeling, because we have many different social circles, friend groups. I mean, we probably interact with more people on the ground than like a top celebrity scholar, right? They're so busy doing other things, and the things that we just hear in our group chats or in our discussions, they just blow our minds. You're like, where are you getting this stuff? How did you end up here? And it's like that's kind of that's like the trajectory that's been going on for the past 10 years. So when we see this on the ground and we see certain messaging coming from up top, that's the connection we're making.
And
we're
like, why isn't this being addressed? Like, I want these people to get some kind of messaging. Is that what it is?
Exactly. Because it's like, well, obviously this is not coming from anywhere. We know that there's a societal pressure.
Yes, it's the worldview, right? This is where we want the conversation to go. So we've talked about like, all right, the Muslim scholars, how it's coming to us from people and authorities that we respect, and that's what we hope to hear and what we're not hearing, etc. But then now we have our friend groups who are lay Muslim. All they know is like that khutbah they heard or that one lecture that got shared with them. They don't study Islam. They don't do any of these things, right? They're living their life, trying their best. 5 prayers.
Omar Suleiman, 2 million followers. Oh yeah, he knows what he's talking about. I'm gonna listen to this guy's thing.
God bless. So now, but we have a worldview. We're being imbibed by this thing where it's all around us. And so when I hear certain friends say whatever XYZ thing, I can tell. Say this is exact. I can't differentiate your opinion from my non-Muslim coworker's opinion, and the reason is we live in the same world. And if you're not getting any other information in how you think, like through a Quranic lens, prophetic lens, well, of course you're gonna have the same opinion, or like the same opinion but like Islamicized almost. Like, oh yeah, no, we're not that much different, right? Because XYZ, I can give you that one Quran verse I heard one time, right? So it's very interesting. So how do we combat that? Because now, and I think this is where you wanted the conversation to go, it's a cultural war. I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, if you're at school, my mom was telling me, right? She works at a school, junior high. She said after COVID, after being remote and coming back, it went off the deep end. I mean, you're talking about exponential growth of craziness at school. She said she's having a conversation with 2 students, and it took her 10 minutes of them talking about the issue for her to realize they kept saying they and them, and this was actually the kid next to them. She's talking about the person next to them, and she's like, whoa, we're talking about this, you right here? Because she could not wrap her mind around the pronoun.
She didn't get the memo.
And the other one was referring to themselves in like the other gender too. It's just, I mean, it's crazy madness. She's like, people coming in acting like animals even, and she's like, we can't, and all the older teachers can't keep up, right? Imagine you've been in the school district for 30 years.
Oh yeah, I heard that if someone comes in and meows, you have to like treat them as a cat. You can't you can't chastise them for
because that's
meowing.
It's an identity, right? So it's gone. I mean, that's at school level. So that's why the conversation about homeschooling has become more prominent in Islamic school. Proper Islamic schools have been more prominent, right? Because we're trying to put our kids in an environment where we're going to teach them about it, but on our own terms, not as this is the truth and everyone accept everyone, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do we combat that? And maybe we can start at the kids level and just keep working our way up to we get to like high school. As I'm a high school or college student, especially in college, right? It's getting thrown at me. How do I navigate that language wise? And people are going to ask me certain questions that frame it like I'm a bigot. And then you get to work, and I can talk stories at work too, right?
Right.
So I'll start with, as kids, how young would you suggest I have a 3-year-old right now. Yeah. Do I start talking to him about this whole thing?
The LGBT.
And the whole, yeah.
So I started with my kids when they were 4. Right. So
that sounds young.
It sounds young. It sounds almost crazy. Like if anyone heard this 20 years ago, they think it's absolutely insane.
Madness.
Right. And still, when they hear it today, they're just like, well, wait a minute. That's still, maybe 10. I'm like, no, because here's what it is. You have to balance. You have to respond to the culture in which you live. The culture in which we live, what age do they start targeting children? They start targeting children at age 5 or 4.
Cartoons now.
4 and 5, yeah. No, cartoons and books.
Yeah.
So the books are at pre-K level. So at first they hit like first grade. When they hit first grade level, right, like the the crayon, the blue crayon that's got like a red wrapper around it, and it realized that it was in the wrong wrapper or whatever. This is a first grade book. Then they have kindergarten books, and now they're coming out with pre-K level books, right? So we're looking at that's the reality. We did a whole program on this at our masjid like a few years ago, 2 years ago or something like that. We brought out an expert. She brought all of the books in the curriculum, and we're like going through it, and it's like. She's like, this is kindergarten and first grade books.
And there's some like rated R images in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen the queer one, where they. Yeah. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
There's a whole series of it, right?
Yeah.
And this is not a California problem. So this same lady, this is Brenda Lebsack. She's like, she started her own website. It's called Interfaith Coalition or something like that for. I forgot what it's called. She renamed it. I'm one of their advisors. She's like, I'm gonna put you on the website as advisor. I'm like, that's fine, man. Just you can throw whatever you want in there. Her point is she wants to expose this agenda, right? She wants to expose to parents to something that they're not being told, and this is what's being told. So she goes to Texas, and a rural town not a rural town, but like a rural city in Texas, outside the major cities. She goes, I was just visiting my sister over there. I walked into the library. And I see the same kindergarten LGBT indoctrinating books in Texas. This is not a California problem only. This is happening across the country, right? So where do we start? I believe we should start at like age 4 or 5 is standard. Now, what do you talk to them about age 4 or 5, right? So I was teaching them a class that I teach anyways, different levels, stories of the prophets. You start with the prophets, right? Start with the prophets, and we go through all of them in a row, and we get to Prophet Lut. You explain Prophet Lut, and you say, you know what? There were men, and rather than explaining the details of intercourse, be like, look, men were marrying men, okay? And it's like, isn't that strange? Like, yeah. I'm like, yes, finally, I got some sane people. You know, my 4-year-old is like, that's weird. I'm like, yes, alhamdulillah, you're still in the fitrah. You know, alhamdulillah. So when he's like, yeah, that's very strange, and I'm like, maybe women were also marrying women at the time. You know, we don't have that clearly, but I'm like, you know, Allah didn't like this behavior. So you start out with a very elementary thing, but explain, these are the prophets. This is what they were doing wrong. You'd be like, look, does idol worship make any sense? Why was Prophet Ibrahim criticizing idol worship? Because of this. Stealing doesn't make sense. It was wrong. Prophet Shaykh was criticizing these people for stealing. So in every single story of the prophet, you're going to highlight the moral lessons, and you're going to explain why. Same thing when it gets to Prophet Lut, you're going to explain why. Right? Yeah. So I start with that, and I think everyone should start with that. So that should be like a moral foundation.
So I'll ask you, you've taught your son in Qom Lut, and now I have a coworker who's telling me he picked up his daughter from daycare around the same age, and then her friend's being picked up by their 2 moms.
Yes.
So now there's concern. I've heard other Muslims say like, okay, I can teach them this, but what happens if they go to school and then they tell their friend, your 2 moms is haram?
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing, and this does happen, right?
Yes.
So now you have to tell them, say, look, you know what? It's what they're doing is wrong. What they're doing is immoral. But it says, oh, I'm gonna go and call them out.
Yeah.
Now you're like, okay, public school environment. If you're seeing that as public school, I'm assuming, right? Yeah, public school environment. They're gonna have to be in the classroom with that kid.
Yep.
You're gonna have to deal with the teacher who's probably gonna be defending this behavior or reporting on your kid for saying something wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
You teach them to be non-confrontational on these things. Be like, look, it's haram, but you don't need to call out everything. So if someone comes in class and during break time, they pull out their idol and they start praying to it, right? You don't need to walk over there and you don't need to pull a Prophet Ibrahim and kick their idol away, right? So Prophet Ibrahim was doing that for a certain reason. So you explain to them, say what they're doing is wrong. What they're doing doesn't make sense, right? Like, does it make sense? Be like, no, it doesn't make any sense. Why would they worship that thing? I said, I know. But you don't have to sit there and you don't have to argue with them, you know, during class or whatever it is. So you explain to them, look, this is the morality of it. This is why it's wrong. And there are people who do that, right? And so my kids, they understand. They're like, there's people who do that. And I explain, and now there's 8 and 7 and 8. One just turned 8 and 9 now. But I've been explaining to them since they were young. My daughters always love rainbows, right? I personally have always loved rainbow colored things, right? It's fantastic. It's beautiful, right?
Natural phenomena. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? But now it's become tainted. So I've taught them since she was 5. I'm like, there's 2 types of rainbows, right? So there's the evil rainbow and then there's the good rainbow, right? So right now, you're young. Yeah, we talked, and I told them, I said, the story of Prophet Lut, the people who Prophet Lut, Allah destroyed, they took on the rainbow and they made it into an evil rainbow. So when you buy a shirt right now in the store or something like that, you're still young. We're gonna buy you the rainbow colored shirt and stuff like that. But I told her since she was 5, I said, but you're gonna get to a point when you get older, and people are gonna start putting like the evil rainbows all over around the place. You're gonna have to learn to be careful. You're gonna be like, you know what? I'm not gonna walk outside publicly with that rainbow because it could be perceived as something else. And she's like, I'm so happy to be a kid. I could still wear my rainbow. It's a 5-year-old. What are you gonna do at 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that teaching them at that level and reminding them that, you know, this is what it is, and just renewing it once in a while. So we were at Walmart the other day shopping, and then I just showed him again. I'm like, you see that whole, there was a pride section,
yeah.
all of the flags and
Target,
the
the first thing you
cups
see, by
and-
the way, is they have the pride section first.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
display
Okay,
when you
okay,
walk in.
yeah. So we saw that there, and we're standing in line, and we're just checking out, getting something real quick, and then, you know, I'm like, you see that? They look at it, and they're like, oh, rainbow. And I'm like, which rainbow do you think it is? And my son's like, no, it's the evil rainbow. And he's like, why would they do that? Why would they do it? It looks so nice. Why would they do something like that? I'm like, you know, if they're going to indoctrinate my kids with falsehood,
Yes.
I'm going to indoctrinate them or teach them the truth at this level, right? And I think parents need to reinforce it, and I don't think Muslim parents are doing that.
Yeah, so that's the scary thing is this is an active effort on your part.
No.
With homeschooling.
So what happened
right? Yeah.
Previously,
the
not anymore, but yeah.
So the problem
Oh,
is
yeah,
we
okay.
put people, most parents, especially if you're an immigrant parent, you just, I mean, our parents put us through the public school system because the default was, it's school. They're going to teach them normal things.
yeah.
The problem is today people still have that mentality, not realizing that they're sending their kids to a 6-hour program where 3 of their friends are identifying as opposite gender. Their teacher is saying this is all okay. He's being picked up by 2 dads. So even if you don't teach them about it, it's being normalized in their head. Even if the teacher doesn't talk about it, by the way, it's normalized in their head that, well, my 5 friends, out of them, 2 of them are identified this way, and 1 of them has this thing, right? So if nobody says anything, just by virtue of being in the system, they think it's normal. They think it's fine.
This is
It'll be harder.
Exactly. This is the problem with Muslim parents. They don't understand
Yes.
what's being taught. And actually, it's funny because Daniel, one of his old articles, was just on point on this. He made this fantastic example. He goes, you know, many Muslim parents used to send their kids to Christian schools before there were all these Islamic schools and all that
I have
stuff.
a lot of friends at Catholic
I
school.
went to Christian school myself, even for a year. So I remember that, you know, if you go to Christian school, if a Muslim parent sends their kids to Christian school, they're like, but remember, we do not worship Jesus. We don't believe in the Trinity. We don't believe in and they're going to give you all these reminders. They're not so scared of you being indoctrinated, but they remind you, and they're like, you know what? I know it's very unlikely that my kid's going to be influenced by Christianity, but I'm going to give them the reminders anyways, right? Because they know what's going to be taught in that school.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't understand, this is what Daniel's point was, he goes, they're being taught liberalism, philosophical liberalism inside the school, and it's a religion. And they don't realize, they think it's just like a neutral, public school is just a neutral, non-religious thing. But they don't realize that there's a religion there that's being taught. You can still send them there, but when you send them to Christian school, you give them a warning and you remind them, you know what? We're Muslims, we're not Christians, we don't believe in this and this, and you better not come home with any Christianity.
But
right?
it's very hard to go tell a kid, they're teaching you liberalism, you better be careful. They're going to teach you about freedoms.
For those,
you
for those who don't know, when we say
know?
liberal, philosophical liberalism is maximizing individual liberty,
There we
individual
go.
freedom. So when we say, oh, Democrats, like no, Democrats and Republicans are both philosophically liberal.
Yes.
Just do it their own way. My gun rights, my speech rights versus my body rights and my choice rights. Those are the same idea manifested incorrectly both ways.
Right. It's true, and it's much harder to respond to.
Yes.
But when it comes to LGBT, it should be a lot easier to respond to because it's a more clear-cut issue. It's not like a
Not a whole philosophy and mindset.
yeah, exactly. So yes, this is exactly Muslim parents need to understand that, and they need to be warning children when they go into an environment. Depending on the environment, you need to warn them. Say, you know what? When you walk into the library, look, there's going to be some. If there's like an adult section, you walk. I don't know if probably not video stores anymore. You walk into a video store, you'd be like, don't accidentally wander into that the back aisle, right? Like your parents used to do that always. You know, you don't read the warning sign, you just walk in. Be like, don't want him to do that. Same thing. You walk into a library, don't walk. Be careful of this. So you need to point this out. So this is what needs to happen, right? So at the lower level, you explain to them stories of the prophets. This is what needs to happen. Prophets, Prophet Lut was being criticized. You're marrying, all of that stuff, right?
someone's okay.
Something
I
going
just
on?
heard something
I
outside.
think they're just sweeping outside.
Oh, they're sweeping. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah. So, at that level, then what happens is you reteach. So this is the thing a lot of people don't get. You're supposed to reteach every Islamic subject at least every few years, because now you're at a different cognition level, and this is well known in the field of education, philosophy of education. You know, how to read a book and all that stuff. You study Sirah when you're in third grade. You study it again when you're in 6th grade. You study it again when you're in 10th grade. You study it again when you're in college. Every single time, it's the same content, but you're going to be processing it in a different manner. Even if it was the same content, but the content should be modified a little bit. So the same thing, you reteach the story of Prophet Lut. You reteach Islamic sexual ethics, depending on the age level. And you keep explaining and you say, look, here's what's going on in society. I was teaching another homeschool co-op thing, right? I had like 20 students. We're teaching Arabic and we're teaching like some Islamic studies unit, and we talked about everything from transgenderism. We talked about even in Arabic. I try to bring stuff up. So I'm like, you know what? Like the Arabic words like sama, it could be masculine or it could be feminine. I'm like, that happens in some words, but doesn't mean that's going to be happening. And that brought up transgenderism. I'm like, you know what? There are people who actually feel like they're trapped in the wrong body and they're going to change into something else. And this is an opportunity to talk to them about it, because I know that their parents are not talking to them about it. Because most parents, most parents are going to shelter them from it, and if they're concerned, and they're going to say, you know what, sheltering because it's better than exposing them to that ideology. But what's even better than that is telling them about the ideology itself, so that you set the agenda, you set the ground, you set the foundation for them. This is what needs to happen. Even at the bare, it's really not even difficult. You just present it and you just plant the seed, and now it's easy to build on that. But if you don't plant it and someone else gets to plant it and set the framework for the first time they hear of it in their life, and they go, oh, there's animals within the animal kingdom that are also gay and they do such and such thing and it's completely normal and blah, 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 right? Now you've lost your opportunity because you didn't get to them first.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we need to do on every stage. And I think there needs to be a curriculum that's developed along these lines. And in fact, Yaqeen is developing a curriculum on how to actually teach particularly high school students. So the person who's co-authoring the Yaqeen paper on LGBT with me, Dr. Usman Asrar, he's actually authoring the module.
You guys are going to be releasing a LGBTQ paper on Yaqeen?
Yeah, you don't know that?
No. Wait, where was this?
Didn't you watch the seminar? He
That's-
told them like 10 times, where's your paper?
That's why I was hired. I was brought onto Yaqeen, and my first paper
I
is going to
didn't-
be LGBT.
Wait, sorry, I must have missed that in the lecture that it was going to be LGBT. I knew you said you were talking about a paper. I didn't know it was going to be a LGBT.
It's about
paper.
LGBT.
Oh, it's LGBT paper.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
sorry.
That's what it's about.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's going to actually be writing a curriculum module. And a curriculum module is significantly different than just an academic paper, right?
What's a curriculum module?
This is how you should teach in a classroom environment. Basically, a Muslim school, an Islamic school, right? There's also Muslim schools. An Islamic school can take the curriculum and teach this to the Muslim kids about how we're supposed to look at LGBT. So it's not just a paper and you say study the paper. This is the curriculum module. This is how you break it down. This is the summary of points. These are the projects. These are the breakout sessions of what you're supposed to do and everything like that. So he starts from the point of, he's already developed some of it. So he starts from the point of, how did you arrive at your understanding of human sexuality? And he poses like probing questions to the average high school person. It's like, well, I thought about it from this perspective, and I saw such and such movie, and this movie kind of shaped my understanding of how human sexual desire should be, or whatever it is. And you start from that framework, and then you build up and you say, well, why are there other people who view sexuality differently? And then you address it from all those different levels. So that's being developed as well, right? So we need that. We need a curriculum. So far, currently, I don't think there's a single curriculum. I don't think there's even like, is there even like a proper paper that you could like give to like study in I think there was like one paper or something. Actually, no, there was a Sunday school. There was I think it was Yorba Linda. They took one of my khutbahs, I think on LGBT, and they made it into like a module. They're like, we're gonna watch this, and then we're gonna do like a few questions and stuff. And I remember kids coming to me to be like, wow, I had no idea. Like, I'm so glad like we heard, but there's not even something written.
Yeah.
You had to watch a video, which means there's a paucity of resources. So there needs to be more resources, but yes, we should address it on every single level again and again and again. And of course, we modify it. Every single time they're at a different intellectual phase, you express it in a different way. You convey it in a different manner, right?
I don't think a timeline was given for the paper in the Yaqeen lecture.
So
do you have a updated?
So the timeline, I just joined before Ramadan. Right?
Okay.
And like 2 months before Ramadan. So Shaykh Umar's like, I've asked you before to join. You said no, right? And like now I'm not taking no for an answer. I want you to join. And I was just leaving IAOC and switching to another job at the time. So I'm like,
you're in Irvine.
I was Irvine, exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? My only hesitation has always been I don't have the time to like pull out papers for you guys and stuff like that. He goes, I'm going to give you the minimum commitment, 1 paper per year and 1 tafsir program per year. So can you do that? I'm like, of course I can do that. He goes, okay, you're on board. So your first paper is LGBT. I'm like, oh, thanks. He's like, yeah, your first paper is going to be like the most difficult and most controversial paper we've ever produced. I'm like, alhamdulillah, that's fine, no problem, whatever. So he said you have till the end of the year. End of the year meaning December 31st. Then what happened is that Pride Month was coming around the corner, and this year's Pride Month was not like last year's Pride
It
Month.
is.
Dude, this is ramped up times 1,000.
This like just massive. This was like 10 times way bigger.
It is everywhere you look. It's there. Any app that I open in my phone, there's some sort of
You'll find
pride garbage.
Phil's Coffee, man. I was supporting them because Christian Palestinian. I prefer them over Starbucks or any of the other companies or whatever. And like one of my friends, he's a big Phil's fan. He's like, even them, they got tainted. Why they have to have like a rainbow flavored coffee? I'm like, come on, man. Like it's everywhere, right? They had I think it was in Canada. They had like a poster of like 2 lesbian hijabis like kissing.
Yeah, they had a big backlash.
Yeah, and alhamdulillah, the Muslims protested. So many organizations wrote response letters back to them, and they took it down. Right, but this didn't happen, right? So all of a sudden, when this was building up, now he's like, can we adjust that from December 31st to like as soon as possible? We need this thing written immediately, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's a really bad time. I'm like literally switching jobs, changing like completely to a different, field. I have to like get acclimated into my new position and all that. So I'm gonna try my best.
Well, thank you for giving us time today, by the way.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm passionate about this, and I enjoy these interviews too. It's
Okay.
like my releasing my tension release for the.
Oh, okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. So inshallah, hopefully in the next few months.
Yeah, in the next few months, in fact, I told Usman Asrar that the proposal needs to be I already wrote a draft. I said the proposal needs to be finalized by the end of this month. So by the end of June, the proposal needs to be submitted in. I already did my part. He's going to do his part. He's going to submit the final thing.
Alhamdulillah.
So that should be done, and then we just need to hammer out the paper. It shouldn't be more than 2-3 months, hopefully, as long as we're both coordinated and we have time.
That's fantastic. I can't wait for that.
All right,
then.
so we moved on. We got talked to our kids. They're kind of going through the school system, and they have a mentality of how this should be addressed.
Do we have a hard cutoff at 11?
No, we can go a little bit more.
Okay, great.
Inshallah.
It's like last time. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta go. 4 hours later, he's still talking.
I'm gonna need some coffee or something though.
We could take a break to get coffee if you'd like.
No. Even if you have water later on, not right now.
Okay,
I'm good
okay.
right now. Yeah, sure.
Yes. So the kid, we talked to him really young, put him in that mindset. Let's talk about high school, college. Both of them, we'll kind of group them together, because now the problem is, and if you look at the statistics, every generation, the number of people who identify as LGBT is doubling for some weird reason. Weird reason, the internet, obviously.
The internet, and they're redefining the standards
That's
to
true.
include more people who are not actually in that category.
Yeah, very good point. I mean,
It's
bisexual
20% now Gen Z.
because the mentality shift has become bisexual is an identifier, right? And now what they tell you is I could be watching a show and I see someone. In the past, maybe a guy, you saw someone who's like, man, he's really good looking. Okay, next. My life moves on.
Exactly.
But now you're like, oh my God. And does that mean I have these feelings?
Exactly.
But no, I like girls. Oh, I must be bisexual.
Exactly.
Right? And then that spirals up. I mean, I'm part of the statistic.
Yeah.
And then the internet also provides the feeding grounds and Netflix and whatever else. I mean, my wife was telling me, we'll go to like Barnes and Noble. She'll look through the books and then find one that looks interesting. We'll go to the local library and check it out. And she says in the past, 2 years, there almost hasn't been a single book. So these are all late books that have just come out currently. There hasn't been a book she's been able to read that doesn't have one LGBT gay somebody character in it.
Wow.
You cannot find one book that they don't throw them in there. It's just a side character, the main character, a love interest. It's something somewhere. It's in that book. It's just modern literature. The same with, I can't remember a movie that's come out in this 2022 that did not have one character. One show, one movie that's been released this year didn't have a character in it.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts? Like the representation is just they're extreme. Yeah. So you have kids now who unrestricted access to their phones, so they're watching Netflix nonstop, YouTube nonstop, Hulu, whatever else, and they're going to college, and however many of my friends identify this way, and maybe you know what he's Muslim, and he identifies strongly with that Islam, and he knows the rules because he was brought up properly. But how do I work with that? Because people are gonna come up to me and say I'm a bigot. When they're going around, and this happened in my work, going around handing out pride flags. So it's not just that you're at desk and like if I want to go get it, pick it up. Like you could be walking outside and they're going to come up to you to hand out that flag. Yeah. So how are we going to deal with that now? Because the idea is if you're not with us, you're a bigot. You can't be silent anymore on this issue.
Yep. So for the average high school kid, right, we have to explain to them what the agenda is. Yeah. We have to tell them that, hey, this is why people are thinking this way. This is why you see in every single movie that you watch, this is why there's a character like that. You have to tell them this is not representative of reality. They're doing that on purpose in order to brainwash you. You just got to call it out for what it is, right? And when you call it out for what it is, in the beginning, they're going to be like, you know, are my parents telling me the truth? Because this seems like a conspiracy theory or something like that. You show them a little bit of data, and eventually, hopefully they're intelligent enough, and you've trained them well enough that they're going to accept that, and they'll be like, wow, this is horrible, right? So this is what needs to happen, I believe. Right?
So you're telling them it's an overrepresentation. You need to accept
overrepresentation. That. You're going to find majority of your friends are doing something, you know, is there like something going on here?
Yeah, I'm trying,
No worries.
Sorry about that, listeners. I don't get to control the grounds.
So tell them there's overrepresentation. Here's the data on what's happening. Give them an explanation and say, you know what? You may feel like you're this weird minority in the world, and you know what? You're just like Prophet Noah. You're just like Prophet Lut. You're exactly doing. You're reliving the footsteps of every other prophet, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you should be proud of that. And that's where the danger comes with the Muslim activists, right? Because the Muslim activists, what they're trying to do is they're trying to internalize that minority narrative that, you know what, poor us, we're so oppressed and everything. And sometimes we are oppressed, but the poor us sad sob story, you know, we're this, we're that. When you internalize that in order to get some civil rights or some benefits or something like that, the internalizing of that takes away the pride of, you know what, I'm one of the few people. Like very few people are, you know, praising Allah, thanking Allah, doing all those things. You're one of the few people who's doing what is right. So there's an aspect of being proud of being the few, and then there's the aspect of we're the oppressed minority, everyone else is not accepting us, and you know, all of that stuff. So there's two ways to take your minority status.
Yes.
And we should reinstill this idea of it's not only fine to be different, it's actually a good thing to be different because it shows you that, you know what, you're standing up to everyone else who's against you, just like the Prophet stood up against their misguided people.
Yeah. But that's, you know what, it's tough. That's really tough on them because there's already so much. I think Shaykh Uthman was talking about how you only have so much pushback. Like you have a tank, so to speak, as a kid, and there's only so much pushback I can do before I get exhausted. I mean, how much? All right, I don't drink, no pork, no relationships. It's like I already have so many things I have to say no to. It's like, how much more do I have in the tank for an entire worldview to push back on that? Even,
true.
Right?
It's true.
So it's very tough. So I want to empathize on that.
There's no doubt. And that's like why a lot of people have been talking about, you know, hijrah, and they're like, it's going to be easier
Turkey.
somewhere else. Yeah, it's in Turkey.
But on parents, I'm not a parent yet, but inshallah, it's on parents to find to cultivate your social circle.
Yes, exactly. Good friends.
Also benefit your children. You don't want to just be spending time with your homie or your sister or whatever because she's a good friend and I can talk to her. No, like find people who are like-minded, who can serve you socially, but also have children that you can socialize your children with.
You trust their kids to be friends with your kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, there's people that I talk to and I'm like, one day, you know, I'm gonna have kids and you're gonna have kids. Like, they're not hanging out. You know, like I know your views and I tolerate you as a Muslim brother, but like
Our kids aren't gonna be.
Well, our kids are not.
You know, you're talking about minorities. I saw a meme. It was a picture of SF. It said, "Man, I've never seen an oppressed minority own real estate in the most expensive place in America because they have owned blocks of SF in the most expensive real estate."
Wallahi, Shaykh, though, speaking on that, that's something, yani, something that I disgusts me. The idea that, you know, you as a Muslim are victimized and oppressed. That mentality, it's
doesn't jive with you.
It does not jive with me at all. And I feel like, especially nowadays with media, you can like see what's happening on in the world. Like, look what's happening, the flooding in Bangladesh,
The earthquakes in Afghanistan.
the earthquakes in Afghanistan. People are dying left and right like flies. We live here in the one of the best, the most comfortable living situations for Muslims in the entire world. The Uyghurs in China. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So for you to be living in San Francisco or living in Southern California or in the suburbs of Chicago, to come out, on your iPhone and your fancy mic and your $4,000 camera, we are an oppressed minority. Like, shut up. Like, please, your reality check.
I think people need to realize the tests we have. So, I mean, I'd much rather this test. I'd much rather this test than a test over there being bombed by a foreign country, sanctioned and starved out,
Taking
whatever.
your kids. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that is a test beyond test. But you know what? From what I can see, they're dying Muslims. So, and that's, inshallah, they're all passing that test. But it's that's a tough test.
Very tough.
That I don't think anyone here wants to go through. But we have people, I don't think, realize we have a test here. And it's just as quote unquote hard for our reality.
It's an ideological test.
It's an ideological, I mean, it's a whole worldview you have to combat. That's not a joke.
Yeah.
Like, your entire way of thinking is being influenced day after day after day, and you have to combat that.
Yeah.
You're like, man, that's so hard. Yeah, but you could be bombed on. So pick one. Like,
Exactly.
you're gonna have a test, and you have wealth and influence. What are you gonna do with that? Right? That's another big test a lot of us have.
You have education.
You have education. How am I going to use it? How do I get that education? How am I going to implement it? Right? I mean, there's so many factors that we have, and those are tests. Just as the test of Sabr over there in the Middle East or whatever it is, you have a test here of thankfulness and how you're going to use it. And a lot of us are failing.
Yeah.
A lot of us are failing and saying, just living my life, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I pray. Sometimes, who cares? Like, God's good. God's merciful. And that's what we think, and that's it. Like, just because life here is easy, Jannah will be easy. It's almost that mentality implicitly.
Yeah.
And that we just need to count our blessings more. If you just say Alhamdulillah and just every time Alhamdulillah for, I don't know, someone told me this, but like, don't just say Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Say Alhamdulillah, and after saying it, say what you're thankful for. Alhamdulillah for my eyesight. Alhamdulillah for the provisions I have. You say that over and over again, you're going to realize how blessed you are to be living in this context.
This was my khutbah last Friday, man. That's what I'm thankful.
Oh, it was?
I mean,
Okay.
remember we did my story about India, and I think we talked about some of those things. Like, you lose hot water, man. Like, you lose electricity. You lose
where to put your trash. The most basic thing.
The most basic thing. You don't realize all the blessings you have until they're gone.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like on my way home from the khutbah. I'm like, going back, this was in Garden Grove. So I'm going back to Irvine. I'm like, what should they do so that they don't have to relive my experience in like going to India, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know what we should do? We should just organize field trips to like South Central, like regularly for like the Muslim youth of Irvine. Gonna go to like South. It's like a different country.
Oh, Imam Jihad's like
Yeah. Islah, man.
Islah.
Islah, and you're gonna walk around. We're gonna do like a 1 mile walk just around that area. We're just gonna walk around. We're just gonna see how people live. And you're not even gonna realize you're in the same country, right? It's like a completely different world. You don't realize what you have. Literally 45-minute drive away. Right.
Take them. They do a weekly food distribution thing. The poor people come, and they just hand them boxes of food.
Yeah, that is one.
And it's Muslims and non-Muslims.
I know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, humanitarian day. Yeah, and stuff like that.
No. Islah LA does this.
Yeah, Islah. Yeah, I know. Islah
Yeah.
does it as well, and it's part of
I didn't
Ilm
know.
Foundation as well. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I know all the brothers involved with it. But
Mashallah, okay.
beyond that, above and beyond that, not just because there's still this thing of like
You'll be surrounded with the good peoples.
this is the problem. The problem is I had visited India before, right? I had visited India. We did a tour. You see the poor people, but you see them from your 5-star window of your hotel. You see them from the car in which you're driving to like a nice fancy restaurant or something like that. That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as when I went there and like the car's breaking down in the middle of a village and like you have to stop by there. Even that's not the same. Like you at least you get to experience them for a while. But then when you're there and you're among them and you feel like, you know what? I'm stuck here. Like I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
You're one of them.
You're one of them. It's totally different. So my issue is that people go and they're like, I do a homeless feeding. Okay, I see the homeless people, but you know the difference is you're at a table. You're behind the table and they're on the other side of the table. You're handing them a thing and you're like, you know what? When I get home, I'm gonna have a nice burger, back in the suburbs of OC, where everything's comfortable and everything. It's not the same feeling. Now you go and you be like, you know what? We're doing an overnight or like a 3-day thing where we're gonna be living here and we're gonna be like, you know, inside the masjid or something like that.
You're eating the food they're eating.
We're gonna eat the food they're eating. We're gonna live there. We're gonna experience their lifestyle, exactly what it's like, and then we're gonna reflect on our own lives. It's very different than simply, you know, being in the car, opening a window, and be like, "Hey, homeless person, here's some food. I feel good about myself," and which is nice, but it's not the same. It's really not the same.
It's not, and you know what? I think that's a positive thing. Just be, I'm just gonna caution you with the activist backlash that someone may say you are fetishizing their living situation.
Voluntourism.
You're exploiting their living situation for your own like spiritual enlightenment. No, I'm serious. No. This is something. So yeah, I need just
whatever it is.
Whatever, you know, just be.
That's fine. I'm not someone who's really cared about.
You're talking about losing hot water. When I was in Thailand, I was teaching English in a village there, remote village. Yeah. And there was one of the teachers all the teachers lived in this place because you couldn't go anywhere. It's too high up, and like so they would stay there for the school year. Then they would go back to their own hometown, like summers and stuff. So one of them moved out. And when he moved out, went to the bathroom to shower, and the thing that sits on the wall, like you turn on the flame, whatever, he took it with him. So he took the whole, essentially the water, because that was his. I was like, oh man, I had to shower with whatever cold water came out of that thing. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, you don't realize it till it's gone.
That's
right.
Man, that's right. Subhanallah. Yes, I mean, yeah, you're right. We need to realize what we have here, and yes, we have tests, right? And the tests can be hard, but we got to deal with it, man. You know, and as people who hate us say, that if you don't like it here, you can go somewhere else, man. So, but in most people, like, I'd rather be here. Like you said, I'd rather deal with this test. It's a hard test. Maybe sometimes it's really hard. It's not as hard as other people's tests, but we can still deal with it. That's it. We got to do it.
Oh, so let's go back. So we're talking about how people are internalizing, we're just minorities just like them, and that's how some people cope with it and create these allyships or whatever else. But so the Muslim, let's say he doesn't have a good friend group, or he's trying to formulate that friend group, or he's at work now, he's only Muslim there. How are we supposed to deal with that?
Work from home, get a different job.
Well, yeah, ideally, right?
But not for
especially when you're right out of college, maybe you don't have those options.
So in terms of, you're still picking your friend circle, so why would it affect you?
Okay, that's a good point.
So you're supposed. This is a very important point. Picking your friend circle, picking the people who you want your own kids and yourself to be around is extremely important. And on top of that, right? And people don't like to hear this part, but you said in every single movie that's been released, right? You got to pick your programming that you're allowing into your heart, right? If you're listening to music, you got to pick your music. If you're watching movies, you got to pick your movies. And the overwhelming majority of movies probably should be off limits because they're going to affect you, right? So now we need alternative media. So the same way you're going to pick your friend circle, now you got your Ertugrul and you got your, Uthman and your all these Turkish shows basically that are coming out.
Prophetic Mentality podcast,
prophetic mentality. Exactly, right? So this is what people don't understand is that, you know what? They say, okay, well, I put my kid in Islamic school and I chose good friends for them too. But still, somehow, this influence, I was restrictive of their friends, but this influence came. Well, what you didn't realize is your good Muslim friends came along, and they're sitting there and they're watching all these movies, and they're normalizing this behavior, and you never did the educational aspect. And they got the educational aspect. And you're like, no, but I regulated it. You didn't regulate it. You didn't realize what they're watching and what they're being exposed to. And this is the thing that people don't like to hear. But I'm very pro removing mainstream what's the term, mainstream, like media like when it comes to books, when it comes to movies, when it comes to music, all that TV show, all of that stuff, right?
Music, definitely, no question. Mainstream music is just
horrible.
Yeah.
Even books, the thing is, people are like, well, I hear this a lot, right? It's like, you know what, at least finally, my kid is reading now. I'm so happy that they're not like these other kids that are sitting there addicted to the screen and there's less screen time. They're sitting there reading books. And then you look at the girl and you're like, what is she reading? She's reading 50 Shades of Grey.
Lord Almighty.
Like what are you talking about? One of this Ammar Shukri, Sheikh Ammar Shukri. He was on a bus, the bunch of Muslim activists, to go to like some I think it was the Japanese internment trip to like visit the memorial or whatever, something like that. It was one of those trips, right?
Okay.
And he's like hijabi Muslim sisters on the bus
Reading
50 Shades of Grey.
Wow.
And he's like, what in the world, right? And this is what I found out what 50 Shades of Grey was. This is a long time back when it first came out. And he's like he's telling me about this, and I'm like, I'm gonna look this up. Look up 50 Shades of Grey. I'm like, dang.
You know what it used to be, right? It used to be a fan fiction of used to be a sex fan fiction of Twilight. And then she edited it and made it a
it was so
franchise.
Popular it became
and what's funny is when I talk about LGBT and part of my khutbah, when I talk about paraphilia, right? Paraphilia means abnormal sexual desire. So you're talking about like necrophilia, people
pedophilia,
necrophilia, someone with a dead corpse,
dead
right?
corpse.
All sorts of weird things. BDSM has been considered a paraphilia for decades, and it's still there, but it's being normalized now. And 50 Shades of Grey is one of the top contributors of normalizing BDSM. Right? So it's interesting.
Pedophilia is also being normalized,
and that's being normalized too
with the drag queens, which is I don't even.
I mean, what's interesting about drag queens is I saw this post, and I think it was a brilliant comparison. Is it's the blackface of women. I mean, think about if I wore blackface and went somewhere, I'd be condemned, right? But what is drag? It's taking the most extreme features of a woman, dressing up as it, and claiming to be a quote unquote woman or dressing as it, right?
That's a good point.
I mean, it's extremely offensive. And I think all women should be offended by it. And the fact that it's being promoted and whatever else.
Crazy. In libraries with kids. It's crazy.
A lot of these drag queens are now like, I've seen 2-3 cases where they get arrested for like possession of child pornography.
I'm shocking. I'm so shocked.
Turns out this guy, like, because they're going around with like, oh, my name is Tina or whatever. It turns out like this guy's like a registered sex offender. His name's like Michael, like whatever it is.
Shocking again.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
but that brings us to another point. Is that this idea of like being a minority and we're like trying to survive, right? I think we need to change that narrative too.
Yes.
When it comes to LGBT, the narrative needs to change. We're trying to save our society, man. Our society's on a suicide course, right?
You're saying our American society, our context?
Our context. American society is being destroyed by the promotion of this ideology. So there's two ways to look at it from a Muslim. It's like, well, it's haram, and I'm going to stay away from it, and I'm just going to resist all the temptations of pressure on me. Inshallah, Allah's going to reward me. But if you flip that around, right? If we look at it from alcohol perspective, we don't have this issue. Be like, oh, alcohol's so difficult to avoid. That's one thing. But then you go, alhamdulillah, man. Look at these people doing stupid things when they're getting drunk, and a significant portion of like these people's daughters are being raped in college because they're drunk or something like that. This is the reality of what happens. We say, alhamdulillah, we don't have any, we have the solution for all of those ills. We should be doing the same thing with LGBT. We should be looking, and it's a lot easier on the trans issue, on the gender issue. People who undergo surgeries, their suicide rate jumps up like 1,000%.
Because they're not accepted by society, Shaykh.
That's not the it's very clear. The evidence is very clear. And there's a massive proportion of people who want to detransition, and when they detransition, I mean, they've messed up their bodies.
It doesn't. You can't. If you took puberty blockers, you don't just hit puberty again at 20, 25. It's you're done. Yeah, you messed up for life.
You're messed up for life. You're messed up.
And I mean, the stats on osteoporosis. So their bones. The ones who get these blockers, they've looked at the long term, at least what they can, because it's very new phenomenon. Newish. They're suffering osteoporosis at rates like 60-year-olds. So their bones are degrading. They're brittle. They're going to break a hip like a 60-year-old woman will break a hip, and you can't get that back.
Like you've seen the documentary What Is a Woman, the Matt Walsh one?
I've heard a lot. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay. Like the point about
I saw the trailer.
I saw the trailer. Yeah. Okay, it's pretty solid. It's not a Muslim framework, but the whole it's
just exposing this wacko
this
agenda.
thing. It's great. It's perfect. I feel like this is the kind of media, and this is where like Muslims should have been making something like that. You know what I mean? Not with the political spin, but like, we're Muslims. We care about our women. We care about our children. what are we really how are we contributing to our society to inflict this change? I felt like that.
I think this is probably, this comes back down to our beginning discussion. This is why I think people are frustrated with this middle group of people.
Yeah, and you know what?
This is what we're supposed to be, the ones who are producing this documentary, and we're stuck here not even like addressing basic political issues, right?
Yes.
So we're really far behind on what we should be doing as a community. So I agree.
So we create a lot of articles, but nobody reads, right? So this is a good point. We have to create that type of media, and this is actually why people are saying, like Dave Chappelle, when he put out his latest stand-up.
Yeah.
And he gets a point across that no academic is ever going to be... I mean, he spoke about transgender in a way... No, I don't care how educated Muslim you are. He put it in a way that the average American like, yeah, that makes complete sense. This is crazy. Yes. Yeah. Like, we can't do that. Like, he can speak to an audience at a level... And that's media. That's spin. That's doing it in a way that... I mean, how he does it, which crosses lines sometimes, right? But he did it in a way that we're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I can write as many articles as I want. You can put as many khutbas on YouTube as you want. It ain't going to tip the needle like this man can do it.
Yeah.
Right? And we have to create a type of media, a type of
presentation
that's digestible to the lay Muslim who doesn't care about anything, to watch it and be like, wow, I get it now.
Yeah, the lay Muslim talking to the lay Muslim.
Even leave that aside.
Okay.
I think the bigger problem is that the people on this spectrum over here, they wouldn't even promote something that was produced like this.
That's fine. They don't have to. Forget
the activist side. Yeah.
The activist side. No, you have ad dollars. There's plenty of Muslims who would consume this. Why not consume this content?
My point is right that they won't even support it. Like, they won't even support it in the sense that they don't even agree with the fact that this exists. They would be opposed to a video like this, which means that they're off their rocker on this issue.
That's fine. You tell them, if you're not going to come to ICNA unless you promote this.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
You want to get these people a funnel line. You hurt their wallet. I'm serious. No more fundraisers on your behalf. No more coming to conferences. We're not mentioning your name. We're not going to pass out the flyers.
You know what the response?
They'll fall in line real quick.
This has come up many times. I brought it up with some of these activists, and they said, let's take Ilhan as a perfect example. Said Ilhan, the majority of the Muslim community is not voting for her in her own district. The
Muslims in Minnesota.
They may vote for her. The other Muslim. There's a Muslim against her. They may like her more.
Correct. Or even a non-Muslim. The LGBTQ lobbies, voting for her and all of that. So they're saying, oh well, money is not coming from the Muslim community anyways, and the Muslim community didn't elect her, but they tried to utilize her popularity when she got elected or whatever it is, right? That's the response. That's a typical response. I want to respond to this in case someone's watching. That's a typical response.
Response coming.
Okay, but the response to that is, okay, fine. But then why are we still fundraising for her? If you're saying we don't fund him, we didn't put her into office, and we didn't do this, why do we continue to support her, fundraise for her, and all of that stuff? Then the response comes back and says, well, that's because the average politician has, and I just talked to a senior Muslim activist in this area. His name I won't mention, but top 10 issues. Every politician has 10 issues, right? And say, well, when we agree with them on 7 out of 10 issues or 9 out of 10 issues, we don't have to agree with 10 out of 10 issues. We go ahead and support that person, right? And I said, okay, I understand the reason. I understand that if you have 2 candidates in front of you and one of them you agree with 7 out of 10, the other one's like 3 out of 10 on Islam. Which one are you going to support? Support the one that's 7 out of 10. They don't have to be 10 out of 10 all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, agree.
But my problem is 2. Number 1 is that Muslim activists, they're going to be like, we should always vote for the Muslim candidate because they're Muslim. I think that's just the stupidest thing ever, because it doesn't matter if they're Muslim or they're non-Muslim. If the non-Muslim candidate is with you on more Muslim issues, right, more Islamic issues, why would you vote for the Muslim candidate? It doesn't make sense. But we have ingrained within the Muslim community that no, if we get a Muslim into office, it'll somehow normalize Islam and then help our civil rights. Well, you know what? Our civil rights are not the only issue out of the 10 issues. There's other issues impacting our children, impacting our family, impacting foreign policy, impacting Palestine, impacting the Uyghurs, impacting everyone. So the first thing we need to be clear is you don't simply vote for a candidate because they're Muslim.
And that's dishonest when they say that.
What is?
We're voting for them because they're Muslim. Look at the Ilhan situation. There's Ilhan and she has another Muslim Somali person running against her who looks more like her hijab is tighter on her head. Okay, and you don't see any mention from these organizations.
Right.
None. So let's call a spade a spade. At some point, it's not about just voting for the Muslim candidate. You're a liberal organization. You support the liberal. You support the liberal Muslim candidate.
Come into the liberal line.
That's what it is.
Yep.
So
and that was my second point. So you go brought my second point. Second point is
that was the second point.
Right, the second one is you don't just support the Muslim. Number two, you don't just support liberal issues or conservative issues because they're being backed by liberals and conservatives, right? We're going to talk more about this on the abortion issue, right? But it comes back down to the majority of Muslim activists, they've just simply aligned with the left 100%. And even when they issue voting policies, when it comes to like marijuana or when it comes to this or when it comes to that, they just go with left-leaning politics. And that's it. And it's never supposed to be like that. So they've become associated with the party, and understandably why they lean towards that party compared to the other party. But it's still wrong because Muslims should not be stuck in party politics.
Yeah.
They should not be stuck in personalities. So, we support this candidate and he's such a great guy. And he said, no, we support this candidate because he's got 7 out of 10 issues we agree with. Just be very clear to the Muslim community about, hey, we support, Bill O'Bob because, why? Because he did such and such thing. We don't say Bill O'Bob's a fantastic guy, we love him, and we're going to parade him, and it becomes a personality cult around them. That's what politics becomes, and I understand that that's sometimes more effective, but when it becomes confusing to the Muslim mind,
that's the way to someone's heart.
There you go. That's where you need to stop and be like, you know what? What benefit and what harm are we getting from these two things?
Yeah.
And we need to weigh that.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, I think that's
Oh no, wait.
You want one more?
I just want to end on like the practicality of it too, because this is a lot of theory, and people are at work right now, and they're being pushed by this all the time.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give you a scenario.
Yes.
I'm sitting at my desk, and someone's walking around. It's Pride Month, so they're walking around. They're handing out flags. They get to your desk.
Is that a scenario? Or did that actually happen?
This not
I'm
to me.
sure this happened.
It happens.
Yeah.
They were doing this at our work, walking around, handing out people walking. So like if you're just walking about, it was
They'd
possible.
give you a pride flag.
They'd come up to you and give you a pride flag. So they're about to give you a pride flag. You're next to your 2 coworkers. He's giving 1, 2. Your turn's up. What happens now?
You got 2 options, all right, depending on your personality type. Option number, it comes back down to personality.
Yeah.
Too. Option number 1, be like, no thanks, all right? And then people will be like, well, why not? Oh, so let's talk about it at lunch. That's it. And you have a discussion with them, and you talk to them about it, and this is your opportunity now to actually have an open discussion about it. Option number 2, they're handing it, and they're walking away. You be like, take it, put it back, and then you just go, either you put it in the trash or you give it back to them or something like that. You just throw it in the trash and you walk away as if it never happened.
Yeah.
That's it. So it depends on your personality. It's kind of like, it's like backbiting. People ask about, someone's backbiting in front of you. What do you do? There's 2 personality types. One of them is like, what? Hey, brother, stop, man. Allah said not to back. You're gossiping about this person. Let's stop. Some people don't have the personality to do that. I'm going to feel bad. It's going to be this. So what do? You walk away. You go refill your plate and you go to another table. Right? So it depends on the personality. But what you don't do is be like, oh, well, I'm being pressured and, it's so hard being a Muslim in America. Okay, I'll put the
pin on my shirt.
The pin on my shirt. That's it.
It gets more awkward when they're like, okay, now get for a picture.
and we should look at the role models within our community. There's amazing role models, man. There's a sister in our community. She works at Michael's, family friend of mine. She works
Michael's, like
the
craft
store. Yeah. So she works there, and she comes in, and they're like, you're gonna be doing a kids activity today, and she's like, okay, fine, kids, whatever it is. Like, you're gonna be drawing rainbows with all the kids. She's like, no, I'm not. She's like, well, you have to. She's like, no, I don't. My religion does not support this, so I'm not doing it. And they're like, you're gonna do it. And she's like, no, I'm not. And she walks out. That's it. So some people who have guts like that, they do that. And I spoke with
that's amazing.
I spoke with some people that care. I'm like, you're gonna
support her.
You're gonna support her. You're gonna support her civil rights or not? You're gonna take this on as a discrimination case? And they said, yes, we will. Yes, we will. I said, great. So I said, do they have the legal right to do this? Yes, they do. They have the legal right to do that, and it could potentially become like the masterpiece cake shop, baking the cake and all that. It could become a potential lawsuit. But yes, we'll support them, and she does have the right to do that. So why wouldn't a Muslim be like, you know what, stand my ground, you know what? I don't. This is against my religious values. I cannot promote something like that. And then they're gonna respond. They'll be like, "Don't you, agree with the right? Don't you believe that gay people have rights too? No, don't you believe gay people have rights?" Say, you know what? Fine, I believe gay people have rights, but this I believe is normalization of homosexuality. It's not about gay rights, and that's what I'm not planning on. That's what my religion doesn't allow me to do. So you want me to have the kids draw like a joint or draw like alcohol or something like that? I can't do that because my religion is against that. Simple as that. So we should support people like that, and Muslims need to support each other, because once some people start standing up, everyone else is going to stand up. And you know, the great thing is that, man, half of this country, they're not down with this stuff, man. Evangelical Christians, Orthodox Jews, they're not down with any of this stuff, right? So you're not the only teacher at school. You're not the only worker in the field who's going to be like, you're not even really a minority on
Prop
these things.
8 wasn't
right?
a landslide in California.
Exactly.
It was close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what we need to remember, and we need to stop acting as if like, there's nothing we can do. They're a very powerful lobby, no doubt, but you're not alone, right? You're not alone. And the crazier they get, I think the more they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Oh yeah.
Right. The amount of pressure that they put this year in the Pride Month, it's going to hurt them in the long run. It's going to be better for us in the long run. Yeah. Right. And once the trans in sports is like taking off, people are getting pissed off, right? Because they're like, this is unfair. How are we supposed to compete against these people? So there's a lot more sympathizers now with the religious cause, with the religious front.
It's a real good opportunity for Muslims to go out there and say we support women's rights. And
we're back, baby. We're back.
Back on the scene, man.
Yeah.
The transgender one's also very interesting. I heard another great comparison. So imagine this black girl. She's like 7 years old. She goes to school, and she's seeing all the white girls and the white dolls and the white TV shows, the white movies. And she comes home. She goes, "Mom, Dad, I want to be white. I think I'm a white person. All my friends are white. I act white anyway. I'm a white person. Can you help me get that surgery to become white like Michael Jackson?" Yeah. And now, the parents have two options. And let's say they said, "Yeah, we can get you that surgery." How would America react to
that actually happened?
It's happened? I mean,
wait,
not on the surgery level, but I know someone identified.
Identify is different. No, not identify. I'm saying I'm changing myself. I'm going to change it. I'm going to become white. I'm tired. I hate.
Did that actually happen? Surgery-wise?
I don't think
there was an activist who believed that she was black.
No, not the activist. There was a young girl, like 7, 8, or 9, who told her parents, "I don't identify as black. I identify as white." And she wanted to become white, but she doesn't. I don't think she'd understand there's a surgery or something you could put in your skin. Okay. So she's like, "Oh, I don't want to identify with black people. Black culture sucks. I want to be white. White people are amazing." So that actually.
So what's the typical backlash from that would be like, wow. I mean, I think black is ugly. That's what manager saying that. I think black is ugly. White is beautiful. I want to be white. I mean, I don't think woke society today won't accept that.
No way.
No,
because.
But interestingly, so what's the parent supposed to do? No, baby, you're beautiful as you are. Let me teach you about black culture. Let me teach you who you really are. Exactly. Why? And then gender should be, or sex, I don't care. They're the same to us. This should be even more so. I think I'm a girl. No, actually, let me teach you about boys. Let me teach you about masculinity. Let me show you these things and who you really are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So I don't know. With race, we would never do it. But with our which is an actual social construct, like the actual real made up thing, that one we never change that. No. But biological sex that you're born with, we'll change that willy nilly. Who cares? We'll give you the blockers or whatever else.
Yeah. It's a good analogy.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, we can put a pause here on the LGBTQ discussion, take a 5-minute break, and then we can come back for the abortion topic.
Sounds good.
Okay, alhamdulillah. We'll probably just actually conclude this episode on the LGBTQ. Jazakallah khair for listening, and tune in to part 2 for this the next hot topic, abortion. Okay, assalamu alaikum.